We'll see if it got fixed, because it's been... Yeah, just a turn.
Bite down say, we fucked up. He talking to bite down say we fucked up. I said, how bite down gonna say we fucked up? I mean, you just say, I said, you. Oh, my girlfriend. We ain't not shop, I'll pull up on the block real quick. Alright, we right on 63rd right now. I'm on 63rd, blue lights.
There's that bridge.
Hey, you ain't gonna let me take my life chain or nothing. Take my bitch, you can't take nothing. Yeah, this bitch is lacking up. Look at 12. Stacy, we don't go to jail. Man, this shit look cool. Shit, we on the block. We finna pull up on folks now. Asia's scared. She ain't never been over.
Man, he says liar.
Huh? Nah, hell no, she ain't drive. She don't know how to drive.
You gonna teach her how to drive? He don't wanna teach me.
I'm gonna teach her how to drive later on when they get hot. I don't know how to drive. I know how to jump out that bitch while it's moving.
I'll never forget when it first happened. I'd heard of Shop and Earn, but I'd never seen it with my own eyes. You got more Shop and Earn savings today.
At Food Lion, we make it easy to get more savings than you bargained for every day.
Yes! You gotta sign up for Shop and Earn.
Y'all Wallow 267, man. Welcome to season 2 of Where's Wallow right here. My little brother Dirk, man. Chicago's in the... Listen, we getting straight to the point, right? I'm in a penitentiary cell doing the dub. I'm on a cell phone. 2013, this is when you shot the film. I'm looking at the film. Came out January 14th on World Star, the film, Chicago. Young cat. I mean, grandma in the crib. Talking about, man, grandma, man, I told her I was going to school. She hooked up, man. Get out early. She ain't going for that shit no more. The film come out, once again, January 14th, right? 2014. How many of them people that was in there did?
Gotta be at least 4.
Did you think you was gonna make it?
Huh?
You ain't think you was? It's just like this.
Yeah, I ain't gonna say that last thing. Y'all thought it was gonna make it? I ain't know what my dad lived. He shot me.
So you know you out there, you doing your thing, and when you look at that, it's like yesterday because I remember because that was my introduction to Chicago. I'm in the penitentiary. I'm hearing about it. I'm hearing about Chicago. I'm like, who? Chicago? I'm like, damn. Young cat, and you know, I'm used to a different type of sound coming out of Chicago. You're not used to that shit. So when I'm looking at it, I'm just looking at it. So I don't pay no attention, but I program a lot of shit because in jail I remember everything. So when I come home, I'm in the streets of Philadelphia, and I go all around the country, and I'm hearing lacking. I'm hearing y'all whole slang, and I'm trying to figure out. I say, God damn, because I had to go study Chicago myself to understand how Chicago infiltrated the slangs of communities all across the country. You can listen to every album and every Every song that come out, you hear Yeah. And I remember, I'm like, this when I first seen it. They had lacking. They put the joints up there on the field. Shout out to man, you know, that shot the field, man. Shout out to the field, man. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's like seeing you. I understand. So I understand what just that time and you growing up. How did do you think that was a major impact on you? You know, taking it to the streets because your father wasn't there.
Oh yeah, like I was the one who always like with my cousins or my homies and like that. They did. They come to get them, so I might go on pop. They used to get to me a little bit like, damn, like I have a pop. Like I got one, but it's like he been gone for 7 months, so I really built a relationship.
How was it? How often did you go see him?
I go every week. Start going every morning. As I started getting older, I started letting it sit in. Like, oh, he kept going home.
And when he came out of jail, how did you feel?
Crazy.
It was like
from the trenches all over, so I'm speaking for everybody, but definitely like.
It's real crazy, but like to see you now you a father. How do you balance being a father and being Lil Durk? How do you, Daddy Lil Durk? How do you balance that?
Right, I took it for a difficult more than any other artist that I know, because I missed a lot of time of their life trying to be in the streets. Like music, but I was more likely like the hood fame. I liked the fame in the streets, the clubs. You know what I'm saying? So it was times I not talking to my kids like a week, but I wasn't really like, damn, I gotta call my kid. I had to remember, like, damn, let me call my, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I had to really just sit back, buckle down, and really just know what I want, because I can't, the way the streets is right now, I can't leave them out there, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, they be done.
Yeah, so I just stepped up 110%, and like my pops being home, he don't gotta make up for me, he gotta do that makeup time for
so that's them, so he come right home, granddad, this is like,
when he was on the phone, I'm coming home, get all I'm like, man, bad as hell.
Yeah, come on, come get him. I sent y'all to come get him. Right, yeah, but to see you light up, man, and to see you just light up coming from that dark environment. When you talk about your kids, you just light up, and that's a beautiful thing. Now, the whole Chicago is like, it was just on fire for a long time. And when it first caught, you was right there, and you like one of the founders of this, that sound. And one of the founders, you, Bibby, you know what I mean? Other ones, you know, Reese, everybody, Herb. So it's like, how do you feel like you're old here now?
Yeah. I always knew I'd be different. Like I always knew I'd be long term. I knew I was gonna have that slow grind. You know what I'm saying? Because people used to tell me like, man, you gonna be different from everybody. You gonna make it. But I was looking at it like, I'm gonna be 1,000. Like, man, you just dig around. In my head, I'm just dig around because you right here. Another motherfucker said you just dig around because you right here. But as people kept saying, and I kept seeing it as I wanted to change, I'm like, damn, I could really do something different. Because when we first started, we talking straight street shit, you singing. And I'd be like, damn. I'm like, no, I'm sticking with what I do. You know what I'm saying? So I just found a way where I just put the pain and the music inside harmonizing. So when people started just, like even today, when people start doing that, harmonizing with I try to take my harmonizing to another level. Or take my to another level.
Yeah,
because you gotta separate yourself, no matter who you is. You anybody, you just gotta separate yourself from your peers.
Yeah. Now, when you going in that booth, right? What is in your mind, and how do you design these hits that you making?
Doubt. Being left behind. Not going in with doubt. But this is what I think about. Going in, just thinking about the doubted times, the hate, the betrayed times. People telling me, yeah, but was playing, left my back, and turned their back on me. It was just, I let all that, but the people, somebody else in my position would have been like, damn, I'm finna just be a killer. But I just locked myself in the studio, and I'm saying, and my goal was to shit on everybody who played with, to shit on everybody, only for who you is, from radio to friends to family members. I always had in my head like, I ain't gonna stop, I'm gonna shit on y'all. And now as time's going, these the same people like, oh, tickets, let me get tickets. But I do it.
But you just remember.
Yeah, but I just remember, like, I get to y'all, love you too. But just remember, you was one of the ones. Like,
who is it? Who is that person that at the beginning they just was like not family member, that person that just was diehard, that from day one they was with it and they still around?
My brother, named D-Bang, one of my managers. shout out to my manager now, Omlet. But I had 2 other managers, SB, and workers, and Chin up that. So, my bad. So, them the ones who was like really with me, like, they want to push. They'd be sometimes like, man, we doing a job. Yeah. But they'd never tell me, like, man, we ain't fuck with you. They changed it. You ain't getting your money till you get the job. I was just fly on the block, like, that was everything I get dressed to go on the block. Yeah. But as I grew, I'm like, man, what was your purpose again? Everybody was dying. So I'm looking like, I know my day coming. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm being real. Okay, I'll do something. Sell me. But my $50 going to $3 on a t-shirt. $1 on socks, boxes, $2 tank top, across the street from my grandma's crib. And I just go change, and I go to then just leave, go on the block, and it be like, oh, dirt. So I'm like, all right, bet. Yeah, I mean, shit. Yeah, but deep down inside, and I'm like, so I just had to, bro, I buckled down, really, like, change my whole life around from people around. I used to kill people, say, are you don't be in the streets no more? Are you on, man, you no street, nigga? I looked at it like, I can't get tricked into that shit, man. You ain't tricked. Another story, be like, oh, Dirk got 100 years, or Dirk let somebody steal him. You know, street nigga. Why do you think when you start doing dick, it's like they snatch you? Like you just a square now. What is that whole mentality? It's everybody, bro. I had to accept that. I wanted to keep proving the point on to send out Mark Hunter to be like, I told y'all I'm out here. I went to jail, ain't had no help. Went to jail again, ain't had no help. It was at the point my mom was at that. It was a million of us. But I feel like 3-4 months. And that fucked with you when you was in that cell. Yeah, so at the time I started realizing like damn, the street shit, like, this would end up to. And I was only fighting the gun case. So I'm like, you got motherfuckers in that old 60s, somebody just did the dub, trying to come back off of it. I'm like, damn. So I was like, no, I can't do that, man. And like it hurt bad.
What the fuck was I doing?
Kids.
Damn.
I ain't gonna write on my mama. I'm treating her, not disrespect her with my mouth. My ass coming in when I want to. She say, no, come steal, bro. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get in to where it's like, I want to be that street nigga. Everything I just said in this interview is running from the back to the first thing I said. I changed all that. That's a good thing, because just being, be able to have that brother, D-Thing, your brother, he was out Iowa slinging. He was out there, he said, man, I come back. He said, I'm out Iowa. He popping. He on YouTube? He said, he seen you, he in Iowa, see you on YouTube, and say, oh, I'm going back home. I got to put this finance into him. You know what I'm saying? And because y'all remember that, and it was like, just to be able to have that brother that got that, because a lot of cats is hot in the street, but they don't have that backing. Somebody
that's 63rd.
That's so important. Because I know it. Out of 5 motherfuckers, he went on me. Everybody said they got my back. I can get into it with his cousin. Now we into it. I can get into it with his cousin. We into it with his brother. Now we into it. But if I get into my brothers with words, we on the same house. Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? So I just looked at everything different. But like I feel like, you know what I'm saying? It's like I've been before. Like you can't finesse me. Like I've been in this shit since 2000. Only time I ever got finessed in my life is when I signed a contract on my own. You ain't gonna get no mouthpiece, no lawyer. No mouthpiece, because I was so thirsty to be fresh. I was so thirsty just to be like, Dirk got a deal. In Chicago, the youth, a young nigga got a deal. Man, you own. Because in the field, you was coming through the BM, the drop top BM. Everything. Yeah. M6. And it was just like, that's what it is. That was 2013. Yeah. You coming through the hood. It just felt good at it. I was like, fuck, I don't know. I just think too many people die and go to jail. And I always be like, damn, that could be me. So you said, I'm signing this deal. Yeah, afterwards, it was like, when everybody started dancing, when everybody really started doing. So I just lock in, like, I can't be another story. What they give you for that deal? That deal was like $500,000-$600,000.
That's it. What was the advance up front?
Like 152.
So you got that? It was like it's on. It's real.
Yeah, it was like, cause at the time it was like, all right, that's how like my loyalty was so strong. But you know, I started to, I ain't no paper, ain't no contract, so I get the money like 20% for management. No way. Man, what the fuck is 20%? You know what I'm saying? But I had to learn it. Like, after they told me like what the contract, I never seen it. I just believe in them so much. I'm gonna give something anyway. But when they say contract, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck contract is. So, but we got that shit together, man. But I'm glad everything happened like that. I'm glad I signed it, all that. Because if I would have shot it too fast, like in my early stages of slot, I probably wouldn't be shit right now. Because I wasn't focused. I still was into the fame shit. But the road we took right now is like the best.
All right, as I look at it now in the game, I try to tell everybody, like when I see them, and a lot of people that I see that's successful, they got a strong team. Did you orchestrate your team? Did your management squad? Or who orchestrated your team? And how important, if I'm a young artist, how important is having a good team?
Very important. I'm saying, because they're going to push you to do your to do the best you can, be the best you can be. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, like, you can have the best team in the world. Like, if you ain't focused, ain't nothing coming your way. They can be the best. They can be, he can be tied in with Rock Nation. He can be tied in with Apple. But if you ain't got no product, you ain't got no music. Like, so.
Relationships supersede everything, huh?
Relationships and a good team get you far.
Get you far, but you gotta have a good product too.
That shit gotta be good.
That shit gotta be.
You gotta have good ass music. You gotta have a gimmick. Is it a gimmick with bad music, or you gonna have good music? Just period.
Yeah, and it seemed like it seemed like the gimmick and the lifestyle is beating out the music sometimes. Like that lifestyle and that gimmick, sometimes it's like some people might you be seeing people like, damn, how is they just popping?
But I never look at it like that because you got motherfuckers with, you got J. Cole with all the talent. There's no gimmick. He don't try to be nothing he ain't. But then you got the next artist with the biggest gimmick in the world, but on top. But he on top and he on top, so you gotta choose which one fits you. Like, if it's a gimmick or if it's a good music, you can make it. It's just if you gonna do it.
Yeah, that's important. And it's like, did your father, when he went to jail, right? He had that money on him, $8 million. How did, like I know you felt like I gotta turn it up like my dad. You know, you want to live your dad got locked up with $8 million, and you like, back in the day, you like, oh, I got
it was the organization as a whole.
Yeah,
that's what that money. Is that time I was gonna see him, I'm gonna tell him like, man, nah, I even time on the phone. I was young, like, man, where that money buried at? Buried money. I know you got some money over here and over here and over here, but the money they left, rest in peace with my uncle. He stole it. You know what I'm saying? He was on drugs, he stole the shit, and that just put everything back to zero.
And you like, fuck, you left me out here.
I was young still. I was just looking, where the money?
Where that money at? Dad used to be my dad. I just need some money. I come on the business
School start Monday. Where the money at?
Where the money now for Chicago? You know, I always ask artists, athletes, how do you spend your influence? Meaning, how do you use your influence? Do you use your influence in any way to do things for kids in Chicago or kids in the ghetto?
Yeah, we did book bag drafts, all that type of shit. It was real. You know what I'm saying? But I think just like when I just go to the mall or when I was going like to open gyms playing basketball with the kid, like grown people too, like lifestyle, LA Fitness, all type of shit, be like some motherfuckers like, man, that song Woo changed my life. And I had that one conversation then.
That's the fucking blue one.
Changed his life. So it's about knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Gifts too, but
the knowledge.
Yeah, the knowledge is more important than gifts.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, you go through your life and you just be like you know me. And I mean, spending the time in jail, I understand that you had a moment, but you didn't have that moment. You had that, you know, that moment where though you just did forever, you like the world and left you, even though you still got some people there, and it just be like, man, like, you know, that, when was that roughest moment? Because that was mine, you know, just being, when was your roughest moment in life? When you was like, was it when you was successful doing your thing and you just went to that dark place? When did you go to that dark place? When was it?
My cousin Lucy did. Like, you know, when everybody down the street, she'd be like, damn, I'll talk to them, put on for the funeral, go to the family house after the funeral. Just always been supportive, but I never lost a blood. far. I say blood, far as like family members. So when I lost my cousin, I'm like, damn, like this shit real. When you really go in the house and see your grandma crying, your mama crying, your auntie's cousin crying, you'll be like, I fucked up. Cause you looking like we in all the streets together. But they always gonna put the face, you know what I'm saying?
Damn, like, nigga, you always
Yeah,
running
like,
around.
If it was the other way around, it'd be like, damn, like, damn, I'm in the streets for nothing. Like, I'm so used to going to everybody else's house crying, mama crying. I'm like, okay, we got.
But this shit hit home.
When they hit home, I'm like, I can't do it. I really gotta lock in. Anytime, yeah, every time I said I was gonna be focused, do what I'm gonna do. I do.
What is like, what do you do that nobody knew that you did? Like chill, or what is something that you do that people be like, what? Dirk?
Man, I was skydiving.
You did? You was scared of the guy?
Nah, I just woke up, was like, I want to go skydiving. I don't know, bro. It's like, I'm at a point where it's like, I'm living their life, bro. Like, people die, they bucket list empty.
It ain't do nothing.
Like, I got some guys in the trenches that be like, I'm ready to go to Cali. They like, the fuck?
You be like, damn, I'm really
Yeah, like, I understand it, but I be like, bro, it's so much to life.
Yeah.
You never been, you go to Cali, you gonna think the world is great. No, you gotta go see, you gotta go, you know what I'm saying? Different places, you gotta do different things. But a lot of people ain't gonna see it, a lot of people will. Like, yeah.
Do you read?
I read, but not a lot.
Not like that. You said, you know. How do you get your information? What is your strongest outlet? What outlet to get information, to receive information, and just to get your. No, I ain't talking about that. I'm talking.
I know. Nah, what I mean by that, say like my ears bad, it's conversation and listening.
Yeah.
Like you, my pops, my uncles, like everybody who got a voice and know who been through something. Like I listen. Like I sit there and be like this shit ain't no joke. Oh, I ain't know you could do this. Like I ain't know about credit, all that shit. I'm like, I don't know about credit with the money.
No, how far did you get into the rap game? When did you finally learn about credit?
I knew at early age, but I just didn't know how to go about fixing it. And telling them don't put no Comcast in my name. Like I just was like, okay, we got cable. You know what I'm saying?
But everybody, you know that you're a kid, you gotta get something in your name in the crib.
No, yeah, of course. But now when I realized, I'm like, okay, baby, I'm talking about credit. You talking about investment to build. You talking about you gonna lock it in the studio. You get motherfucking money, so let's get some pounds. Like, you like, hold on, but you balance everything out. That's what you want to do. It be like, all right, baby, you gotta do what your man put you up to, bro.
It's like now, it's like artists got it made. It's like, you know, all these activations that these brands be having. It's like,
see, back then when it was less money, it was less expensive.
Yeah, it was. Yes, just it was.
Fair. But like, you get $1 million, you looking at everybody else, you want $1 million house. So now you spend that $1 million, you get back to something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So by the price of everything going up, the lifestyle change, you want to be your favorite basketball player. So when you get that money, you spending it, it's like you going back broke without even knowing it. So it's like the same, like record deals and shoe deals. It really even out to like.
Do you deal with like accountants and all that stuff? Okay, they handle.
Yeah, I be doing a lot of running around, bro. And it'd be some shit I'd be like, I can't just take on all this shit.
What's the most money you spent at once?
No,
straight up.
What you think?
Oh, the journey.
Of course, that like outside.
That money.
Outside of the clothes, like that's the regular
I got
recycling.
big clothes out. Like I got big clothes out. It's like I don't know. It's like everything I want to do. Like growing up, it's like I'm doing it.
Yeah, now you
always want to be a fly nigga. You see a fly motherfucker, I just be like, no, I can't.
So you went from
through the black and the white motherfucker feel I gotta have the Jordans. They talk what you call it? The packages.
Yeah.
Like 3 something. You at school, motherfucker got some kids now. Man, your mama gonna slap the shit out you. You spent 3 on a pair of shoes.
Yeah. So you went from being the dude that's buying the $3 t-shirt to buying
$300
the $300 t-shirt.
They be tired of me.
They all gotta be.
Yeah. I just
It gotta be
wear it
driven.
once.
Yeah, we don't want if it ain't noticeable, I'm gonna keep it. Like all the mirrors and all, I'm gonna keep it. But if I got a top that's too noticeable, Can't wear that again.
Can't wear no more.
You pass it on.
Pass
Pass it on.
Okay.
You know, that's like, man, like what is that's deep. You just be throwing things out of the shirts away. That's deep shit. Like, you just be throwing some people.
But it'll be a way. I'm changing. It ain't. I'm fake. If I did say away, I mean I give it away.
Pass it to somebody. Pass it to somebody now. Now, do you have any businesses?
Yeah.
Multiple. Huh?
Real estate. Oh, we got a truck company.
Oh, it's running around the country. Yeah, y'all ain't playing. Y'all getting it.
Yeah, because the way I spend money, they like, shit.
We gotta do something.
We gotta do something.
But that's back to having a good team.
Good team.
If I had a bad team, they don't finna tell me why I'm sending you $40,000 for you got 40 in your pocket.
Yeah.
They just look like, huh, you got anything you want. I got my money from you. You got to get 10, they gonna tell you like, no, take that 40. You can keep it, at least put 20 back into the trucks. Or let's go half on the bill. Let's go half. That's the type of team I got.
Mm-hmm. That's important. Like now in this game, this video game, like all these videos. When I say video game, I'm talking about like everything is. How important is the visual? Like if I'm an artist, I'm looking at how important is that visual to that sound?
Man, you got me about all the clothes and money. That shit gotta be saying. Nah, but look, the visual's important because the kids want to see it. Like that's how you dance. I can dance like this. And at the same time, that's how you gonna sell your shit. Like I got this type of t-shirt I know everybody gonna like. Why went I wear it in the video? How everybody back.
Hey, but now, has any brands that you like to wear the most? Have they come to you with a check?
A few, but I want to wait. I want to wait till it makes sense. I want to wait till I get to a level I want to get to. To be like, because you get the money you want. That's not that they offer. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what I want.
From 1 to 10, where are you? 1 to 100. Where are you now and where you want to be at?
Well, now?
Yeah, where do you feel as though you're now in the game and what number you want to be at? 1 to 100.
Of course I want to be at 100%. But right now, I feel like I'm at 50.
Okay, so it's a lot more.
It's a lot more.
There's a lot more.
We got a Grammy?
No.
Boom!
What on, family? It's your boy SNTV. Back at y'all with another Chirac Street Live. And this episode is gonna be about none other than Grandson, aka King.
Man, this street shit all bad on King Day. I done lost everybody. I'm Fortnite, you hear me? Everybody dying, everybody in jail, everybody dead up here in Lloyd, you know. Streets on King Day. It's life though, you know what I'm saying? Choose your life. We having fun, we out there.
King Von is originally from Killer Ward, 78th and Hermitage. He actually went to grammar school on 76 in Walcott at an elementary school called Barton Elementary. From kindergarten through 8th grade, Von was pretty much a good kid. He really got into sports, but when he made it to high school, that's when he began to really get into the street. He went to Hyde Park Academy. Von's criminal life will begin around the time he was making his transition from Killer Ward to O Block. O Block is a set of BDs located from 63rd to 66 King Drive to South Calumet. Their main block is 64th and King Drive. They have friction with 051, Gyro City, Taekwon World, MOB, and their main is STLEBT. They're clicked up with 600, 300, THF, the 30 Boys, NLMB, and Front Street.
Yeah. She ain't got no pennies. King baby. But see, that's how you look good. Yeah.
Vaughn would end up catching a robbery and a carjacking case at the age of only 15. The DA would agree to drop the charges if King Vaughn would agree to go to boot camp. So that's exactly what he did. King Vaughn would get out shortly after.
Why'd you abandon Beverly?
I ain't abandoned nobody. It was just time to come home.
Just be prepared. There's gonna be some deep resentment there.
These youngins are about to change the game.
After getting out, King Vaughn would catch a gun charge. The first time King Vaughn would do 14 months. He would end up doing 15 months on the gun charge. After he would be released, a short time later, he would then catch a first-degree murder charge and 2 attempted murders. King Vaughn was no longer a juvenile, so he was going to have to fight for his life now. King Vaughn was looking at more than 100 years if convicted. In May of 2014, King Vaughn and a guy that goes by the name of Michael Wade, who is said to actually be Wooski's brother, went to a party on 57th and LaSalle. At this party, King Vaughn would encounter a guy mugging him, a guy that went by the name of Malcolm Stuckey. Well, apparently King Vaughn didn't like the fact that Malcolm Stuckey was mugging him, so him and Big Mike left the party. Him and Mike would come back to the party and catch Malcolm Stuckey on the porch with 2 other guys. They would open fire, killing Malcolm Stuckey and injuring the other 2 guys. The police would arrest him in July for this murder. King Vaughn would be charged with 1 murder and 2 attempted murders. Well, King Vaughn never said anything to the police. Big Mike, on the other hand, actually told on King Vaughn and admitted to firing 15 or 16 shots at the 3 people that were sitting on the porch. King Vaughn would end up beating his case because of insufficient evidence, and the witnesses that they had were unreliable. He would be set free at the end of 2017. King Vaughn is also identified with a couple more bodies, one of them being the guy that went by the name of Modell from STL. Also, King Vaughn is thought to be one of the people that was on the STL KI hit when Butter was also shot. It was somebody definitely with Big A, and word is, it was King Vaughn.
Cause we outside. Body into attack. Big M, bitch. Folks golden, bitch. And I got a lot of bodies. Folks golden, bitch. Hell no, you ain't. Folks golden, bitch.
Tell them I got a lot, DJ.
Y'all know what I'm doing. No doubt. Y'all know folks get busy on something.
Just free, how many y'all think? Y'all leave stop there. Nah, he got it.
Hey, look.
That's made up.
What y'all think? Or y'all think this ass all cap?
More in the crowd.
Maybe cap.
I'll tweak it out. I'll tweak it to that.
Oh, yeah, ain't. It's talking shit.
On 4 more than 5.
My brother saying numbers and shit.
We received the loan almost 2 weeks ago, and our plan is to have a complete staff working.
I'm so glad we were able to help you guys. I'm so just joyful.
I'm just playing, man. We trying to stop playing.
Talk shit. You know?
Hey,
Y'all that scary shit, y'all. Y'all getting scary. Stop being so scary.
After beating his case, Vaughn would hit the streets. Vaughn had been watching Dirk and seeing what Dirk was doing in the rap game. Dirk would encourage Vaughn to go ahead and start rapping. Just so happened, Vaughn turned out to be good at it, and Dirk seen that. Vaughn went in the studio, wrote a song, recorded it, shot a video, Dirk posted it on his channel, and that was all she wrote.
Cold a body, beat that body, catch some more. See niggas be flogging, like they want some problems. Gotta drop on this flexin' nigga. He from Tennessee, you just brought a Glock with a ruler clip. Boy, don't play with me.
Vaughn's success will come at a rate that if you blink your eye, you might have missed it. He will blow with the help of Dirk, using the art of storytelling mixed with drill. This was something that a lot of the younger drill fans had never heard. Plus, they had a real street figure that they can look up to. And if there's anything that I know about Chicago, Chicago loves gangsters. You can be a gangster in Chicago and do something small, and it becomes bigger, strictly based off the fact that you have juice in the streets. Vaughn will have one of the fastest blow-ups ever seen in drill and rap history. But Vaughn also would hold a vendetta. When Vaughn was locked up, his best friend T-Roy was killed in 2017. This was something that Vaughn harbored because Vaughn and T-Roy called themselves twins. They were always together. They did a lot of dirt together. They came up from the same place, mud brothers. So even when Vaughn did get money, Vaughn was still on that. You would always catch Vaun dissing his aunt. And Vaughn's mind, it was up there, and it was stuck there. And there was nothing nobody can do to turn it down. T-Roy was killed in Paxtown in 2017 after he was over east looking for TB, who at the time was Taekwondo World's biggest hitter. T-Roy was spotted, and the call was made to TB. TB would get the drop on T-Roy and end up killing him. Vaughn was locked up, so this crushed him.
And now you know, that nigga Melly. Now he one of them niggas you could talk to, you know what I'm saying? You could talk to him because he cool. And he got a little points, whatever he did, you know? So it's just, it's okay. Now he tell me, I had the nigga that shit. The nigga I made he dead, or he dead right now. But like, he tell me that to me is a lie. He like, I knew you was gonna get out shorty. You lost your best friend. God had to let you out. You see what I'm saying? Like God, he owes you that. I said, that's some real shit for a bitch ass top ass nigga to play on anything. But he told me like, yeah. He said, yeah, see, after I knew you was gonna. I said, yeah, that nigga my man, I couldn't believe that. Fuck it, 30 days, 30 nights. Fuck it, on King Day, just busting on King Day, say ain't that for nothing. Y'all tripping.
And this would just be another chapter in the war between O Block and STL. In February of 2019, King Von and Dirk's name would come up in a situation that took place at the Varsity Restaurant downtown Atlanta. Now, if you know anything about Atlanta, you know that the Varsity Restaurant is pretty much a landmark. The situation that occurred had something to do with a guy being shot and robbed. And allegedly, King Von and Dirk would have something to do with this. They will both be charged. After their bonds will be met, there will be certain rules set in place. One being, they can have no contact with each other, and they couldn't be around each other. You would think that this would hinder the OTF movement, but it didn't. It actually kind of made them go harder. as Dirk will continue to do what he's been doing, and Von will continue his rise to the top. Also, Von was a different type of guy when it came to his help out the community. Von would go to his and give away $100,000 just for the people that he grew up with, and for the people that he loved the most, and for the people that loved him. Also, Von would do stuff like giveaways. He also did a food drive. And this is the type of stuff that made him who he was. This is the type of stuff that earned him the king in his name. Von was supposed to fly on his Instagram, letting everybody know where his album release party was going to be. He was about to get ready to release his project, Welcome to Omlet. It was also his cousin Top's birthday. So they figured, why not kill two birds with one stone and go ahead and celebrate everything. Von posted to his Twitter exactly where he was going to be, and that he wasn't scared. He wasn't hiding. The night started off lovely. Everything went according to plan. It wasn't until after the club was over with that everything began.
Street, there was a incident where two groups of individuals got into a physical altercation. That physical altercation escalated into an exchange of gunfire with those groups. Two police officers who were working at that particular club or lounge noticed the gunfire, noticed the altercation, and engaged some of the people involved. There was a exchange of gunfire with police as well. At this particular point in time, we have about 5 individuals who have been shot. 2 are deceased. 1 is in critical condition and 2 are stable.
Police shot King Von and 2 of his people. Social media is active with, they're upset with the police. So if we have any jobs in Parkway, send 2 cars every time, okay? And keep your eyes open, be wary. They're not happy with the police over there.
King Von was having an album release party for his album that had just dropped, Welcome to Omlet. They were also celebrating a birthday bash for his cousin, Boss Top. Also, a couple of his artists had just signed deals, so this was an all-around celebration. Everything went well at Club Opium, and the plan was to go back to the hotel when they left the club. They would leave the club, and all of a sudden, Von would have a change of heart. Well, Von wouldn't notify nobody in his camp until after he was already at the Monaco Hookah Lounge. Someone alerted Von that Quando Rondo was asleep parked in the car. Rondo would wake up, and when he came to, he would see the OTF member standing in the parking lot. He would immediately hop out the car. Von would walk up on Quando Rondo and punch Quando Rondo in the face. Not even 3 seconds later, Lil Tim would hop out of the white and shoot Von in his back 3 times. He would also shoot Von's manager. After Von and his manager were shot, Lil Tim would also be shot. Those first couple of shots would send off a chain reaction, and 2 off-duty police officers would begin firing excessively. During this process, Slutty, the older brother of HK and T. Roy, would be killed. Also, Louis from O Block, who was a good friend of King Von, would be shot and placed in critical condition. After this altercation took place, you would see Von holding Rondo, and Rondo telling everyone that Von was shot. Soon after, you would see someone who comes up and takes off on Rondo, knocking him down. This someone was Muwap. Shortly after, when everyone left the scene, Quando Rondo would go live.
Come on, hit, bro, you got this shit, fella. Keep breathing, cuz. Come on. You got it, my fault. Yeah. Man, me shot, what you mean, we're outside? Come on, man, please, come on, all right.
Okay.
Get him a wheelchair. Man, what you mean I gotta stay right here? Man, we need to get him. Man, we need to get him back there ASAP.
Just a short time later, Lil Tim would be caught and charged with the murder of King Von, and King Von's death would be heard around the world, with lots of celebrities sending their condolences. King Von's autopsy photos would also be shared. The internet would get a hold to him, and they would also make memes about the death of King Von. Even though King Von was disrespectful, I don't think that he would have stooped this low. I feel as though the death of King Von was an unfortunate situation. It was a situation that happened so fast to the point to where nobody really knew exactly what was going on until it was too late. King Von's friends and security were behind him. King Von had in his mind that he was going to fight Quando Rondo one-on-one, and that was going to be that. But Lil Tim had other plans. He seen all of those guys coming behind King Von, and he got scared. He jumped out the car, pulled out, and killed King Von. This was all verified by King Von's manager, who ended up doing an interview with DJ Academics. And I think that what we can learn
Net from
from the
63rd.
life and death of King Von is this. No matter what position you get in life, never give up. Continue to fight, because you never know what the outcome is going to be. King Von had just beat a murder and 2 attempted murders, and there he was on top of the world. And even though his run may not have lasted long, I can honestly say that King Von lived his life before he died. We have to understand in life our position, and sometimes we get caught up thinking in our old ways, and those old ways can get us injured a lot of times. King Von was no longer the street King Von. He was no longer the guy that came from the streets that was putting in work. He was the king. He was the one that should have been protected at all costs. And it's sad to say, but ultimately, King Von's decision making is what got him killed. This has been the story of King Von. Rest in peace to all of those who have lost their lives in foolishness. It's your boy, SCNTV.
Most of these niggas, they fool, and they don't really fuck with you. Let me tell you the truth. When on the drill, they ain't even shoot steady, acting against the thing. Soul, I be keeping mute, walking, shooting shit, and he don't even. I was out the window, he was out the roof. I was on the block, you was out the loop. I was in the Ford, he was in the tours. I was in the zoo shooting shit with.
What on, family? It's your boy SNTV. Back at y'all with another Chirac Street Legends. And this episode is going to be about none other than FBG Duck, aka Big Clout.
Doug, what you doing on the block? You really on STL? We really on STL? I'm kind of nervous. What the fuck? You nervous for? There's a lot going on. You just pulled out what I was doing. You just chilling, man. Well, no, what I was doing. Tell them what I was doing. Oh, no, you told him go get 3 guns. All right, then.
FBG Duck comes. or Shoot to Live. They off of 63rd in St. Lawrence or Tuckerville. They GDs. Their main beat is with G's that go by the name of O Block. They off of 64th and King Drive. Now a lot of people don't know this, but Duck actually has been rapping for a long time. As a matter of fact, he's been rapping for like 9 years. He actually started rapping, I think his first song was like 2011.
The reason I'm doing my thing is for the fucking team. Why don't act like I want us to fucking do this? Put your ass right on the news. You let niggas take your shit and you still forget that thing. I can't go that route. Damn. Let off 23 to 7 more. That's how I call for parts. For first. JoJo song. He had the beat.
Before the death of his brother and his cousin on the same day, I feel as though after that situation occurred, it sparked something in him that made him just want to start going harder. And that's exactly what he did. And for someone to actually keep a sane mind and continue to go hard and continue to get better and still continue to rap after all that Duck has lost. Duck is probably the artist out of Chicago that has lost the most friends and family. He's lost his brother Brick, he's lost his cousin Raheem, he's lost his cousin Scrap, he's lost his cousin Kobe Mack, he's lost Tuka, K.I., Taekwon, TB, Poppy, JoJo, Boss Trail, Tutu, Lil B, Denzel, Dusky, Mammy, Lil Mister, Motor, or seeing as how FBG Duck was basically out when the drill scene first came into fruition, and seeing how he went from 2011 to just now getting a deal in 2008, and he still hasn't necessarily rolled the heights of a, let's say, Dirk or a Chief Keef. I feel as though Duck feeling like he's being blackballed, there is some truth to it.
They don't like to see me in a position that I'm in. They don't like this. Just think about it. Them niggas got deals before me. They thought I'd never get one. They don't like it. That shit hurt them right now. I'm a nigga that they call they op, right? Right? And I'm a nigga that know how to rap, right? They don't like that. They be telling they rapper friends don't fuck with me and shit. I'ma rob them and all that good ass shit. Straight hoes. Like, that's some real gay shit. Like, you telling this nigga don't fuck with that nigga. Let them rapping ass niggas be rappers, G. Nah, let the rappers be rappers, bro. This how rappers get their money. Leave that Chicago shit in Chicago. Leave that Chicago shit in Chicago, G. Stop trying to take what we got going on in this city to the next city. Come on, G, you niggas just clowns. Y'all wanna fuck up my money. That's what they wanna do. These niggas wanna fuck up my money, bro.
FBG Duck, like I said before, have been around since the drill scene started, and Duck has been an innovator of a couple different things. One being the use of the word clout. Now, you know, I'm not gonna say that he invented the word or no shit like that, but I have to admit that when the Clout Boys came out, FBG, they had been screaming clout for so long before other people started saying it. So I understand what he says when he says that he started the word clout or the Clout.
Everybody know who started the word clout. You know what I'm saying? Say Cheese put it up. I know you saw that shit, right? You know, you saw that shit. What was your thoughts when Say Cheese put it up?
My man started that shit. That's the
Same as I told y'all. That was the first day I ever heard it. You know what I'm saying? multi-millionaires and niggas that's in the rap industry talking about, yeah, I'm trying to get clout or such, clout it up. How does that make y'all feel knowing, nigga, we started this shit on 53rd, man? No, I know y'all, but how that make y'all feel?
Motherfuckers been saying clout, but we motherfuckers that's like clout boys, you see what I'm saying? Now you got motherfuckers saying clout gang. Everybody want to use the word more. You see what I'm saying? No, everybody. You heard motherfuckers saying it, but you want to hear motherfuckers saying how they saying it.
Okay, when Drake said it, what was y'all thoughts? Like, damn, they really following our shit? Lil Wayne said it, Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, they did.
I said, I should have come right. Hey, lady, next time.
The nigga, whoa, say that. Hold up.
I know they know my man, so if they don't keep them, they know folks.
The nigga, what's his name, folk? The ugly guy nigga. He call himself Clout Gang.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Ironically, FBG is actually indirectly responsible for the smoking on iPads. Apparently, FBG made a song in honor of Tuka, and they said something about they were smoking Tuka, and Chief Keef used it in a disrespectful way, and of course, the whole thing blew up because at the time, Chief Keef was the hottest rapper in the city.
All these niggas be trying to smoking.
Niggas that he dropped. Yeah, OG, y'all gotta get that on my mama. Niggas swear to God that other artists started smoking Tuka.
Niggas actually took our shit and started saying it in a disrespectful way. You see what I'm saying? Niggas started taking it and saying it in a disrespectful way. Man, y'all smoking too, we killing y'all, man. Fuck it, man. Hold on. This is a big ass issue. Tuka in my blood.
Niggas like this. Okay.
So your man started that shit off with respect, and now motherfuckers using that.
Niggas took our shit and started saying it in disrespect. That's just crazy because everybody smoking on their option shit out here.
Duck would eventually end up signing a deal with Sony after he dropped the hit single Slide. I think that the reason why Slide was so hot is because even though FBG Duck was doing his drill thing and he was talking his shit, he still didn't diss none of his ops. So it made it easier for the other side to listen to it as well. When it comes to FBG, I just feel like FBG and O-Block have been beefing for nearly a decade, and both sides have lost an awful lot, and it's pretty much time to let that bullshit alone. Whatever happened in the streets, that happened. I commend for coming out with the song Chicago Legend, even giving respect. It's definitely an extended arm.
I don't give a fuck what nobody feel. I don't fuck what nobody say. I'm a grown ass man. That way. Then again, we ain't gotta be friends. We ain't gotta be together. We don't gotta hold hands. Feel me? Saying that shit, man, because I knew there was gonna be a lot of idiots on here who saying, man, we ain't agreeing with that shit, we don't touch that shit. It ain't about us at this moment. Right now, it's about the culture, it's about the kids, it's about the older people who gotta walk the streets and worry about if they gotta get hit by a bullet.
That's how like growth and development.
You see, that's exactly what that is. That's growth and development. You see what I'm saying? It's not about us. We putting people in the middle about a beef that we have going on, but we gotta, in order for this shit to be over with, it gotta start with us first. You see what I'm saying? It gotta start off with the motherfuckers who got y'all thinking. Y'all listen to our music, think y'all savage. Y'all listen to Lil Durk, Chief Keef, me, all that shit. Everybody, Lil J, whoever the fuck y'all listen to, and it made y'all think y'all savages. And half of you niggas became shooters off of music. Because you want to be what this nigga saying in his rap. You want to be a nigga who shit splat. Or you want to be a nigga who bite. You want to be some shit like that, like you
negative type of shit.
I'm just saying, you want to be something negative, but you don't want to be something positive. You ain't worried about when your mama gotta bury you and can't come up with the funeral money. Or you see what I'm saying? Like, cause you niggas ain't leaving nothing behind. There's nothing you left behind for your mama to bury you properly. Because you was doing that with your life. You out here gangbanging, shoot motherfuckers for nothing. You go kill a motherfucker for some rap in the hood. No, back then they used to kill motherfuckers they got paid for. It's not like that no more because you niggas out here young and dumb. Like a bunch of you niggas, a bunch of young dumb niggas who don't know how to grow up. And then the worst part about it is these niggas act so savage, but they gotta listen to a nigga. That's what be killing me. Like, you gotta listen to your boss. You have a boss. So how is she, you know what I'm saying? Like, so if your boss tell you, you gotta do this, you have no choice but to do that. You see what I'm saying? Like, you have no choice but to do that. And most of you niggas got bosses. You see what I'm saying? Like, most of you niggas have a boss. You see what I'm saying? Like, y'all niggas gotta listen. So if I came to the conclusion where I want to meet up with Lil Durk and say, man, look, man, we finna get this money. We finna you stay out my way, I'll stay out your way. We don't leave it in the streets. But when it's about this paper, we ain't gonna interrupt each other. But what's in the streets is what's in the streets. What's understood ain't gotta be explained. Like, I can't do summer jams and BET awards and all this shit because they afraid of what's gonna happen if I see Lil Durk or anybody else. If he see me, how that shit gonna go? How it's gonna play out? Right. And then one ass will never get invited to that shit again. You see what I'm saying? Like I already said, I ain't trying to be you niggas' friend. I ain't trying to be your homie. I ain't trying to hang with you. We ain't gotta shake hands. I ain't trying to squash no beef. I ain't trying to do none of that shit. I'm just trying to make a difference. You see what I'm saying? I'm trying to make a difference. We gotta show these niggas like who following our lead, man. Every nigga who following our lead, we gotta show them.
Look at him, little nigga, yeah?
You see what I'm saying? I got 4 kids, bro. They gotta eat. So if I leave, and I let a nigga kill me and take me out this shit, then who the fuck gonna teach my kids right from wrong? Nobody. You see what I'm saying?
I think that one thing we can learn from FBG Duck is this. Never ever give up on your dreams, no matter the circumstances. Never let anything derail you from what you say you want to be or from what you say you want to do. Keep going. One thing I know, it will rain before the sun shines, but it will not rain forever.
The arena, hundreds have fallen before me.
A mile from the Capitol, these roads are all but shut down. Again, a week before Inauguration Day. Unless you know, I got to say, our NBC Washington Bureau, the only way one can access that is if they've got their NBC Pass right now. That is how locked down Washington, D.C. is right now. Again, a week before Inauguration Day. These measures are already in place.
And Vaughn, what are we hearing as far as whether it's plans or rumblings? Do we know of any protests that could be on the horizon in the next week or on Inauguration Day?
There are no threats today that we have been made aware of for today's purposes, but there was concern, and even Twitter themselves, in the statement when they banned President Trump from Twitter, put in their statement that January 17th was a day of particular concern because there is reporting that not only is the U.S. Capitol expected to be targeted, but also individuals are being called to the state capitals in all 50 states. And that is why, from Maryland to Virginia to out west, law enforcement at the state capitals have been called into high alert because of credible threats on the capitals as well as this U.S. Capitol. Of course, that is Sunday, January 17th, and then there's Monday, Tuesday, and not until next Wednesday when an actual inauguration day is slated to take place. And we should note that it was determined and announced just yesterday that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will in fact take their oaths the west front of the Capitol, outside, despite some calls to take that oath inside. They will in fact be taking their oaths outside the Capitol building, as is tradition on Wednesday.
And Vaughn, on Wednesday, is it going to look like it does today, or is there any difference in security measures from today, this next week, until next Wednesday?
Per the COD official, we expect them to more than double the number of men and women that they have. Again, 6,600 National Guardsmen and women are in Washington, D.C. today. That number is expected to be ramped up to 15,000 by Wednesday.
Ron Hilliard, thank you so much for your reporting and for giving us a look at the scope of the security. Huge contrast with what we saw last week. Sahil Kapoor, I want to ask you real quickly, pardon me. We know we heard earlier for Leanne Caldwell had asked Steny Hoyer, the second-ranking Republican, Democrat in the House, about sending the article of impeachment after today to the Senate, saying he wanted to do it right away. We're now reporting from our own Casey Hunt, who saw Speaker Pelosi, asked her the same question, and she said, I will not be making that announcement right now. So I guess we're getting conflicting messages right now from the leadership in the Democratic Party in the House. I guess how do we sum up what we're hearing as far as what the plans are after today, and what are the options?
Among Democrats as to the procedure here, as to how to move forward. There is a contingent of Democrats that includes Steny Hoyer, the majority leader, that believes the House should not delay this. Impeach him, send it to the Senate, and let them do their thing. They don't want to dither on the process here because, in their view, that would diminish from the moral clarity that they're trying to convey, that this president did something bad and deserves to be impeached, and this should happen immediately without any delays or wavering. There's another group of Democrats, particularly moderate Democrats, that worries that a quick impeachment now sent to the Senate immediately would hinder President-elect Biden's agenda. It would prevent the Senate, they fear, from confirming his nominees quickly and from getting his economic stimulus, which is his top priority, off the ground. Now, there is valid basis for that concern as a procedural matter. The Senate is an arcane place. It's very difficult to do anything without unanimous consent, especially conduct other business in the midst of an impeachment trial. At this moment, the Senate is out until January 19th, unless it comes back early, which doesn't look likely at this point. They will have to start the impeachment trial just as Joe Biden is taking office. And some of the Democrats I'm speaking to are worried they're not going to be able to get unanimous consent to conduct other business like legislation and nominations in the midst of that trial. So that's what we're hearing. It sounds to me from the reporting that I'm doing that the push to send the articles to the Senate quickly is winning the argument. But the argument is still not over. And I suspect that is why Speaker Pelosi doesn't want to make that judgment just yet.
Sahil, stay with us as we take a quick break here. For those of you watching at home, you are watching procedural votes that are before the actual vote on the article of impeachment. We will continue our continuing coverage of these impeachment proceedings after this quick break. Welcome to Today. It is good to have you with us.
As we started, we're right there with you to kick it off right.
Let's go 2021.
Stay healthy.
We're going to show you all the ways to keep calm and de-stress.
And stay connected every morning on Today.
I'll tell you what the American people's mandate is. Heal the nation. It's why he ran. That is why he won. How close to the breaking point is our hospital system? Why should we feel confident that vaccine distribution will go smoothly? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Exploding to staggering. President-elect Biden moves forward with his transition. What are your priorities going to be in those first days? With vaccinations ramping up.
How are you feeling? Incredibly optimistic that we're at this point.
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news. Trucks carrying the first U.S. shipment of the coronavirus vaccine. Hope for a whole lot of people who have been waiting months and months. It's news made for your streaming world.
Are you ready?
Monday boost?
Are you ready for a boost?
How do you feel about that book?
We love those nurses. That was beautiful.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
I didn't know, was my child dead? Is my child passed out?
I just kept saying, please be okay, please be okay.
You rush your child to the hospital.
A woman came in, normal clothes. We get down the hallway, and she closes the door. They were accusing me of child abuse.
And that's when the real nightmare begins. Hey, calm down.
No, it's my children. I can't calm down.
Do no harm. All 6 episodes, plus a special bonus episode, are available now. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
We have been living in perpetual grief. The incomprehensible loss of life, shuttered businesses, the fabric of civility ripped apart. We found solace in our heroes. And now finally, we see what hope looks like. Our worst year is over. Thanks to science, defeating the virus appears to be in reach. How we heal the wounds left behind. But us.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of the impeachment proceedings that are happening right now in the House. What you're watching are procedural votes that take place before the debate and then the vote on the actual article of impeachment. It's the stuff that happens before every time. Nothing really to report so far here. Most of these Republicans, you'll see in that tally they're jumping over into the yay category, but we have not seen that yet. I now want to bring in NBC News national security correspondent Ken Delaney, and hopefully for a do-over. I know the last time we had him, as we're all working from home, we had a battery die on us, but actually now we've got a little bit more context anyway to ask you this question about this reporting that you put out a couple of hours ago. Now that we've seen our colleague and friend Von Hilliard actually out in front of the Capitol building, showing that who, by the way, is now armed. In your reporting, Ken, you mentioned that prior to last week's insurrection, the FBI was circulating this report that mentioned that people were sharing a map of tunnels at the Capitol complex. That's also notable based on what we saw with Vaughn, who pointed out the fact that the Library of Congress right there is within that perimeter. And there are tunnels between the Capitol building and the Library of Congress. I'm assuming that's the type of thing that's going to be visible on a map that was being circulated. So what I was asking you before is, to you that something like that intention seems to be to be doing harm to people on what we've seen the security is today.
It is shocking, Savannah, that the FBI didn't take that intelligence more seriously, and I think we've all learned a lesson from this, which explains the massive security presence that Vaughn was showing us. It's a wake-up call. But confusion about what intelligence the FBI had, how credible was it, and what they shared with the Capitol Police, because they said they did share some information with the Capitol Police about threat reporting and people saying things on social media threatening the Capitol, in addition to that Norfolk field office report you mentioned. But senior Capitol Police officers have told Congress that they were not aware of any such FBI intelligence. So if it was shared, it wasn't shared with them, factored into their planning, and we all know they were woefully unprepared. So, this was almost a 9/11 level intelligence failure, but like after 9/11, thankfully, it looks like the U.S. government has learned from it, and so the Secret Service is now in charge of protecting the inauguration and the Capitol. There's a massive presence, as Vaughn showed us, fencing, armed National Guard, Homeland Security. And the FBI is now targeting people who are saying they're going to commit violence and arresting them in cities around the country. So
visually, obviously, we see the night and day difference between what's happening right now. But operationally, behind the scenes, what were some of the things that changed that are trying to make things more secure as we move forward?
I noticed, Joe, that we reported yesterday that put out a joint intelligence bulletin. around the country. They wanted to put that out before January 6th. Learned that what this really was protected political speech. It wasn't violence, and the FBI shouldn't get involved in disseminating intelligence about that. Well, over the last 2 days, we've seen all sorts of threat reporting intelligence bulletins from the FBI talking about potential plots in all 50 state capitals. Even though, look, it's obvious there aren't going to be attacks in all 50 state capitals, but the job of the FBI is to report on the intelligence that it gets and make sure that local law enforcement knows about it. So that's been a change. There's also, I think, a greater cooperation. What we saw before the January 6th riot, police agencies not communicating well. There was a group of 50 tactical DHS armed officers who never were deployed. It was too late. An FBI SWAT team. Now it appears that there's much more coordination behind the security plan, and I don't think anyone is going to rely anymore on the 2,000-member Capitol Police alone to protect the U.S. Capitol, a temple of American democracy.
Ken, of course, the reason that we're talking about this right now is because we do have such a monumental thing happening today, this historic second impeachment, potentially, of President Donald Trump, and this is happening within these buildings where we saw these rioters last week. And I'm just wondering, if you think about these lawmakers who are in these buildings, yes, they are lawmakers, yes, they are public figures, but they're just people with families who were scared last week, who were sheltering in place in offices or in these secure locations within the Capitol building. They're there today. What they're doing is something that many of these people who were rioting were specifically calling out, people who would be voting to impeach the president. I'm wondering, when you see the security presence there today, how do you think they feel? What's it like going back to their offices, knowing what happened last week, seeing the president? Is it good enough now? Do you think they feel safe?
Well, Savannah, I know from talking to some of my sources on Capitol Hill that people are traumatized by this event. Unlike anything I've seen in my time in Washington, they never thought they would be threatened in the U.S. Capitol. I mean, we've all, as reporters, gone into that building. I fully would expect, if I had charged past the metal detectors and the guards, which checked my badge when I walked into that building, that I would have force you to begin. And the idea that and all these rioters got in there has really, really shaken members of staff that I've talked to, lawmakers, and there's also an issue of now we're seeing lawmakers being accosted around the country and in airports. And look, the Capitol Police doesn't have enough people to give a security detail to all 535 members of Congress and the Senate, and so there's going to be a reckoning there about.
Legend tells of a place where everyone comes together to play and dance and race and shoot and jump.
No matter how from 63rd. What are you doing, buddy?
But if they acted in a way that manifests and to single someone out based on race or religion or some other prohibited class, then yeah, we might very well have hate crimes. We need to make individualized determinations of criminal liability, and we need to come down like a ton of bricks on people who broke the law.
Senator McCaskill, first of all, we can report that President Trump is in the Oval Office right now. Kristen Welker just confirmed that the president does, in fact, appear to be in the office. It is unclear what he's doing. He obviously can't tweet. Presumably, he is watching this unfold on cable news, as he is prone to do. Senator, this idea that part of the motivation here from Senator McConnell, this reporting in the New York Times, that he is perhaps okay with the idea of impeaching the president and starting a trial. How much of Senator McConnell's motivation here is keeping the president off the ballot in 2024 and trying to use this as an opportunity to purge his party forever of Donald J. Trump?
Well, there's no question Mitch McConnell is very angry over what happened in Georgia. I think most people agree that one of the main reasons that the Democrats have taken control of the United States Senate is, in fact, Donald Trump and how he behaved in the weeks prior to that special runoff election. So there are a number of Republican senators that would like to banish Donald Trump and his ilk from the Republican Party. It will remain to be seen whether they have the political courage to do so. I do think that Nancy Pelosi will send those articles right down. I think maybe her declining to say that she was sending them immediately might have had something to do with Steny getting out ahead of her and her wanting to reestablish that she's the decision maker. But if you think about it, the urgency of this goes away if they hold them for any amount of time. And it becomes much more political. Time. The sooner these articles are transmitted for trial to the Senate, the more it gives everybody in America the sense that this is a complete reaction to the horror that they witnessed a week ago.
Thanks so much. We'll be getting back to you in a moment. I just want to first say that as the outgoing president, of course, is facing the second impeachment, there is an incoming focused on his first 100 days in office, President-elect Joe Biden, saying that he hopes Congress can multitask, expecting Democrats to move forward with impeachment without hindering his agenda. NBC News correspondent Mike Memley joins us now from Wilmington. Mike, what is the mood there? The President-elect is certainly projecting he can do two things at once.
Well, Andrea, just to put exactly 1 week from this very moment, a President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. will be delivering his first inaugural address to the country, his first remarks as President of the United States. And in the conversations I'm having, all of their focus remains on that moment and the moments that follow when he inherits the very real and very difficult challenges and crises that the country faces at this moment. And I have to say, Andrea, you know, I feel a little bit of deja vu at this moment as well, because some of the most jarring moments of the roughly year and a half that I spent covering candidate Joe Biden were about a year ago at this time, when we were chasing that no malarkey bus all around Iowa and trying to to Joe Biden about that was happening in Washington, while Joe Biden kept his focus on talking about his rural agenda for America. And this was a candidate then who was very much trying to stay focused on the task at hand, which, as he said, was defeating President Trump at the ballot box, while there was this very consequential debate happening in Washington. And here we are now in Wilmington, 125 miles away from Washington, and we won't see the president-elect today. He is, they've already declared a lid here in Wilmington, but we do expect to hear from him tomorrow when he will address the nation about his plan for dealing with the coronavirus. So yes, there are very real consequences to what's happening in Washington today for his agenda and for his nominees. There's obviously questions about the degree to which a Senate trial could stop the Senate from doing the business of confirming his nominees. And we know Biden has been working on phones to try to have conversations with Mitch McConnell, who is the outgoing majority leader, and Chuck Schumer, the incoming majority leader, about how this all could work. But the Biden team very focused on trying to stay above the fray. Everything Biden is doing is really about one of those very difficult challenges he inherits a week ago at this moment, which is uniting the country, and therefore he's staying out of the process in Washington, Andrew.
And in fact, they've already scheduled the confirmation hearings for a few of the people, and particularly the Secretary of State, on the 19th, so that he could be at least have a hearing of the confirmation hearing.
Andrea, thank you. Mike Memley live for us there from Wilmington. Thank you. So you have been looking at, on the left side of your screen, that second procedural vote wrapping up. We're almost done with it. You can see only 13 votes are outstanding. This vote has not been gavelled yet, but so far, it looks like it will be a party line vote. Just a procedural rule to basically move on with the impeachment debate. That is going to happen within the next 10 minutes. Here's how it's going to unfold. You'll see this vote gavel closed. Presumably at that point, we will move on then to the 2 hours of debate over impeachment. Between that time, remember, we are still living in a pandemic era. They're going to have to come in and basically clean parts of the House floor there so that the debate can begin. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is expected to open that debate. We are, of course, going to bring you live into that the second that it happens, live for every minute of this historic second potential impeachment of the President of the United States. And on that note, I'll bring in NBC News Chief White House correspondent Kristen Welker. Kristen, we understand, as Craig reported a moment ago, that the Marine is stationed at their post just outside the door of the West Wing, presumably indicating that the President is inside the Oval. We know that he has an isolated circle, increasingly isolated inner circle with him. My reporting from talking with sources over the last
18 hours or so is that the president is doing nothing to expand that inner circle. What are you hearing?
Well, that underscores everything that we're hearing here, how the administration officials have confirmed for me that the president is in fact in the Oval Office at this hour. This could not be more starkly different, Hallie, than when you and I covered the first impeachment of President Trump. During that time, the West Wing was filled with staffers, his legal advisors buzzing around the West Wing, trying to respond to the press in real time. They were flooding the airwaves. This is a ghost town. There are only a few staffers here in the West Wing at work right now, and there are only a few people who are advising the president, who he's really listening to. So he is increasingly isolated. And what's becoming clear is that he doesn't have a communication strategy at this point in time, and it seems as though he doesn't have a legal strategy, at least one that is... To us, we understand that Rudy Giuliani is going to be among those leading his legal team if and when this does go to the Senate for a trial. Some other names that we're hearing, Alan Dershowitz, but I spoke with him overnight, and he said he hasn't been contacted by anyone from the Trump administration or any of the president's advisors, for that matter. So this is a very different situation than his first impeachment, when we had a very clear sense of who would be leading the legal team, and they were quite eager to talk to the press. And I think that is because you are seeing so many of his former aides and allies start to frankly break with him. It replicates the cascade of resignations that have happened here behind the scenes. But look, it's not everyone. We know that he does still have some of those who are standing by him, like Senator Lindsey Graham, who appears to be the sole Republican lawmaker who is reaching out to other senators and urging them not to break with President Trump, not to vote for conviction. And we know that some of those in Trump world are getting very concerned about that. They've been pushing talking points that, look, the vast majority of Republican voters don't want to see the president impeached. But we are just seeing this backlash grow and mount, and the president is increasingly defiant, even sullen in the face of this. Yesterday, of course, he traveled to the border with Graham, by the way, to talk about what he sees as one of his key accomplishments, the border wall. And we're told that that's part of his focus right now, thinking about what his strategy is going to look like, and his messaging on his way out the door. There may be one, hopefully two speeches that he gives before he leaves office, as he faces a very real reality that is going to happen in just about a week from now. When will he leave? Details are still being worked out, and it's just remarkable that we're not hearing more from him in the face of obviously his biggest political battle to date. Hallie.
And Kristen, just to follow up briefly, his megaphone on social media, of course, on all the platforms around. What are you hearing about him giving a speech, and what is the thinking inside the White House about that?
What we're hearing is that he wants to, in some way, try to salvage his legacy, which will undoubtedly be overshadowed by this distinction now that he will be the first president in U.S. history to be impeached twice. And so he is trying to determine what specifically he wants to highlight. We know that some of his top advisors have started to work on potential speeches for him. And yesterday gave us a very good indication, Andrea, of I think what we can expect to see, a president who is defiant and defending his legacy. He's going to talk about some of those other key moments that he thinks he would like to be defined by, not just this moment of being impeached twice. The president yesterday was asked about all of this. He referred to impeachment as a witch hunt. That's, of course, one of his most familiar talking points.
God damn it.
The first impeachment, and from the Russia investigation and all of those political scandals that loomed so large over the early years of his presidency. But I think what's striking is that the president is still trying to determine exactly what that final messaging is going to look like. And I've been talking to some of his allies who say they're concerned about the fact that he's so isolated, and they're wondering who is around him who can not only help him with that messaging, but who can help with the work that needs to be done in terms of governing the country for this final week, guys.
Thanks so much, Christian Welker. Hallie, as you know so well from covering the White House, is it Ivanka? Is it Jared? Is it Cipollone? Who has the trust of the president? I think some people would hope it's not just Rudy Giuliani reinforcing the delusions that he can actually stay in office. If they think that their legacy is not going to be defined by these days, by this week, and the weeks that preceded it, the months that preceded it since November, and the denial of
the denial of a concession. You know, it's more than a formality. The concession from one defeated president, a first-term president, we've seen a number of them in recent history, to his replacement is an important fact to his followers. And in this case, there are so many, 74 million.
Right. The circle, the list is certainly short, Andrea. The people who are with the president and who are in contact with him. Dan Scavino, his social media director, his right-hand man in many ways, by all accounts, is there. Johnny McIntyre is another name that we've heard from sources who is around the president. Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, of course, who is in some ways trying perhaps to manage some of the outreach to the Hill. He has certainly his detractors inside the administration as well, who wonder what is he doing at this point. Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump are always voices in the president's ear. But at this point, listen, Andrea, I started this administration saying this, right? Inauguration day 4 years ago. And Inauguration day 4 years later, I'll still be saying this, which is the president is his own manager. The president is his own communications director, his own chief of staff. He is doing what he wants to be doing here with the help of the people around him, because in many ways, the people around him are looking to help him execute his own policies and strategies, not redirect him to new and different strategies. An example of that, there was some reporting from our colleagues in the news media over at the Washington Post, Ashley Parker, Phil Rucker, Josh Dawsey, who obviously are familiar to many of the folks who watch MSNBC as contributors, talking about how that video, you talked about the concession, Andrea, the president coming out and trying to say something on the night of January 6th. He ultimately did it a day later, but say something that would try to essentially calm tensions on the night of January 6th. There were 3 different versions, according to the Post, of that video taped. And the one that came out was determined to be the most palatable by aides. And that was the version in which the president told those rioters that he loved them and that they were very special people. That speaks volumes about what is happening inside the West Wing and what has been over the last week. This president did not want to be impeached the first time, right? He felt like that was going to stain his legacy, was concerned about that. Imagine a second impeachment. That is going to be, you have to imagine, the first line in the history books as this story is written. Craig, I want to bring you in here and just reset for a moment as to where we are. And I just want to check, have we gavelled that second procedural vote? I'm going to ask my team in the control room. I don't believe so, but I just want confirmation. No gavel. So that second procedural vote is still open. That's the vote. When that concludes, as you can see, 11 people remaining. When that concludes is when we will move into the portion of debate. That's going to be 2 hours. This is a live shot now of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi making her way through the Capitol Rotunda, it appears, heading over. She will be presumably introduced by one of her Democratic members. And you can see members of the news media, boy, such a different image, Craig, of this room than we saw 1 week ago today.
Yeah, you know, to your point, and I think we shared with our viewers last hour, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi a short time ago was outside the Capitol thanking the hundreds of National Guardsmen who were stationed outside the Capitol. Of course, we've seen the images of the National Guardsmen, the armed guardsmen inside the Capitol. They slept there last night. They'll be sleeping there at least through Wednesday, we're told. Thousands of guardsmen descending on the Capitol after what we saw unfold last night. It looks like one additional congressman has voted. Oh, look at that. 2 additional congressmen or women as we get ready to start this debate. To your point, does start this historic debate. We are committed to bringing it to you over the next few hours as these lawmakers make the case for and against impeachment. Leanne Caldwell will also, of course, be watching and listening very closely. Leanne, for folks who don't do this for a living, walk us through what we are going to see and hear unfold. We know that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will be speaking first. What happens after that?
Craig, that's right. Speaker Pelosi will speak first, and that's just a very strong signal that how important this is and how historic this is. Speaker Pelosi doesn't speak often on the House floor for debates, for legislation, or for amendments or resolutions, but she does when it's important, and this is obviously a very important, critical day. After Speaker Pelosi speaks, then the debate will open up. There will be 1 hour for each side, the Republican side and the Democratic side. They will alternate by speakers. we
Damn,
think either
just shot that nigga.
Jamie Raskin, who is a lead impeachment manager when it goes over to the Senate and who co-authored this article of impeachment, is going to lead this debate, or Jerry Nadler, who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And what I'm going to be watching is how many Republicans get up to speak and what they say. Do they defend the president? Do they defend their attempts to overturn the Electoral College vote? Or do they use the more mainstream Republican line right now that impeachment is only dividing the country, that they need to put this aside, look forward, and not impeach the president for the sake of unity? So those are some of the things that I'm going to be watching, especially in this 2-hour debate. And then the actual vote on the article of impeachment is expected to take start around 3:30 p.m.
And we now know, Leanne, what the final vote is. They are gaveling it down, at least unless there's somebody changing their vote. It was 221 Democrats, 209 Republicans, 9 not voting. So it was a party line vote. And we saw Pelosi being accompanied by Congressman Nadler, of course, the House Judiciary Chair, and also Raskin. And we know the terrible story about the death of his son just in the last week or two. So these are Raskin is certainly going to be the lead impeachment manager in this second impeachment, and certainly Pelosi in going, as you know so well. Let's listen to the clerk.
Conviction of treason, bribery, or other crimes and misdemeanors. Further, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution prohibits any person who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States from holding any office under the United States in his conduct while President of the United States.
Oh no, there's 30 people left.
Faithfully to execute the office of the
Where the
President
fuck this
of the United
nigga?
States,
There you
and
go.
to the best of his ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, Donald John Trump engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors by inciting violence against the government of the United States.
I don't know. He must have ran off.
January 6, 2021, pursuant to the 12th Amendment to
I don't
the
know how.
Constitution of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the House of Representatives, and the Senate met at the United States Capitol for a joint session of Congress to count the votes of the Electoral College. In the months preceding the joint session, President Trump repeatedly issued false statements asserting that the presidential election results were the product of widespread fraud and should not be accepted by the American people or certified by state or federal officials. Shortly before the joint session commenced, President Trump addressed a crowd at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. There, he reiterated false claims that we won this election and we won it by a landslide. He also willfully made statements that, in context, encouraged and foreseeably resulted in lawless action at the Capitol, such as, if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Thus incited by President Trump, members of the crowd he had addressed, in an attempt to, among other objectives, interfere with the joint session's solemn constitutional duty to certify the results of the 2020 presidential election, unlawfully breached and vandalized the Capitol, injured and killed law enforcement personnel, menaced members of Congress, the Vice President, and congressional personnel, and engaged in other violent, deadly, destructive, and seditious acts. President Trump's conduct on January 6, 2021 followed his prior efforts to subvert and obstruct the certification of the results of the 2020 presidential election. Those prior efforts included a phone call on January 7, 2021, during which President Trump urged the Secretary of State of Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, to find enough votes to overturn the Georgia presidential election results, and threatened Secretary Raffensperger if he failed to do so. In all of this, President Trump gravely endangered the security of the United States and its institutions of government. He threatened the integrity of the democratic system, interfered with the peaceful transition of power, and imperiled a co-equal branch of government. He thereby betrayed his trust as president to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. Wherefore, Donald John Trump, by such conduct, demonstrated that he will remain a threat to the national security, democracy, and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-governance and the rule of law. Donald Trump thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. The resolution shall be debatable for 2 hours, equally divided and controlled by the chair and the ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler, and the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan, will each control 1 hour. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and insert extraneous material on HRES 224.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished Speaker of the House, the gentlelady from California, Ms. Pelosi.
The gentlewoman from California is yielded 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding and for his leadership. Madam Speaker, in his annual address to our predecessors in Congress in 1862, President Abraham Lincoln spoke of the duty of the patriot in an hour of decisive crisis for the American people. Fellow citizens, he said, we cannot escape history. We will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance or insignificance can spare one or another of us. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. Even we here, he said, hold the power and bear the responsibility. In the Bible, St. Paul wrote, think on these things. We must think on what Lincoln told us. We, even us here, hold the power and bear the responsibility. We, you and I, hold in trust the power that derives most directly from the people of the United States. And we bear the responsibility to fill that oath that we all swear before God and before one another. The oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, so help us God. We know that we faced enemies of the Constitution. We know we experienced the insurrection that violated the sanctity of the people's capital and attempted to overturn the duly recorded will of the American people. And we know that the President of the United States incited this insurrection, this armed rebellion against our common country. He must go. He is a clear and present danger to the Since the president elected an election the president lost, he has repeatedly lied about the outcome, showed self-serving doubt about democracy, and unconstitutionally sought to influence state officials to repeal reality. And then came that day of fire we all experienced. The president must be impeached, and I believe the president must be convicted by the Senate, a constitutional remedy that will ensure that the Republic will be safe from this man who was so resolutely determined to tear down the things that we hold dear and that hold us together. It gives me no pleasure to say this. It breaks my heart. It should break your heart. It should break all of our hearts. For your presence in this hallowed chamber is testament to your love for our country, for America, and to your faith in the work of our founders to create a more perfect union. Those insurrectionists were not patriots. They were not part of a political base to be catered to and managed. They were domestic terrorists, and justice must prevail.
Man,
they did not appear out of a vacuum. They were sent here by the president with words such as a cry to fight like hell. Words matter. Truth matters. Accountability
fucking matters.
In his public exhortations to him, the president saw the insurrectionists not as the foes of freedom, as they are, but as a means to a terrible goal, the goal of his personally clinging to power, the goal of thwarting the will of the people, the goal of ending in a fiery and bloody clash nearly 2.5 centuries of our democracy. This is not theoretical, and this is not motivated by partisanship. I stand before you today as an officer of the Constitution, a Speaker of the House of Representatives. I stand before you as a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a daughter whose father proudly served in this Congress, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr. from Maryland, one of the first Italian Americans to serve in the Congress. And I stand here before you today as the noblest of things, a citizen of the United States of America. With my voice and my vote, with a plea to all of you, Democrats and Republicans, I ask you to search your souls and answer these questions. Is the president's war on democracy in keeping with the Constitution? Were his words an insurrectionary? Do we not have the duty to our oath to do all we constitutionally can to protect the nation and our democracy from the appetites and ambitions of a man who has self-evidently demonstrated that he is a vital threat to liberty, to self-government, and to the rule of law? Our country is divided, we all know that. There are lies abroad in the land spread by a desperate president who feels his power slipping away. We know that too. But I know this as well, that we here in this House have a sacred obligation to stand for truth, to stand up for the Constitution, to stand as guardians of the Republic. In a speech he was prepared to give in Dallas on Friday, November 22nd, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was to say, "We in this country, in this generation, are, by destiny rather than choice, the watchmen on the walls of world freedom. We ask, therefore, that we may be worthy of our power and responsibility. That we may be worthy." President Kennedy was assassinated before he could deliver those words to the nation, but they resonate more even now, in our time, in this place. Let us be worthy of our power and responsibility, that what Lincoln thought was the world's last best hope, the United States of America, may long survive. My fellow members, my fellow Americans, we cannot escape history. Let us embrace our duty, fulfill our oath, and honor the trust of our nation. And we pray that God will continue to bless America. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and yield back.
The gentleman from New York, reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 19 minutes. 19 minutes. 4 years ago on Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2017, 19 minutes into President Trump's administration, at 12:19 p.m., the Washington Post headline was, "Campaign to impeach President Trump has begun." And now with just 1 week left, they're still trying. In 7 days, there will be a peaceful transfer of power, just like there has been every other time in our country. But Democrats are going to impeach President Trump again. This doesn't unite the country. There's no way this helps the nation deal with the tragic and terrible events of last week that we all condemn. And Republicans have been consistent. We've condemned all the violence all the time. We condemned it last summer. We condemned it last week. We should be focused on bringing the nation together. Instead, Democrats are going to impeach the president for a second time 1 week before he leaves office. Why? Why? Politics and the fact that they want to cancel the president. The president who cut taxes, the president who reduced regulations, the president prior to COVID had the greatest economy, lowest unemployment in 50 years, the president who got us out of the Iran deal, put the embassy in Jerusalem, brought hostages home from North Korea, put 3 great justices on the Supreme Court, gave us a new NAFTA agreement, the Abraham Accords, the COVID vaccine, and who built the wall. It's about politics. This is about getting the president of the United States. They spied on his campaign before he was elected. 19 minutes into his presidency, they started the impeachment push. 3-year Mueller investigation, 19 lawyers, 40 agents, 500 witnesses, 2,500 subpoenas, $40 million to find nothing. Impeachment round 1 based on an anonymous whistleblower with no first-hand knowledge who was biased against the president and who worked for Joe Biden. And now it's impeachment round 2. It's always been about getting the president no matter what. It's an obsession that is now broadened. It's not just about impeachment anymore, it's about canceling, as I've said. Canceling the president and anyone that disagrees with them. The Ayatollah can tweet, the president can't. Democrats can object on January 6, 2017, but Republicans aren't allowed to object on January 6, 2021. Democrats say Antifa is a myth, Republicans condemn all violence all the time. The double standard has to stop. And frankly, the attack on the First Amendment has to stop. And stop and think about it. Do you have a functioning First Amendment when the cancel culture only allows one side to talk? When you can't even have a debate in this country, this great country, the greatest country ever? It needs to stop, because if it continues, it won't just be Republicans who get canceled. It won't just be the President of the United States. The cancel culture will come for us all. America's a great country, the greatest country ever. It seems to me that we need to think about how great the people of this nation really are. Think about what we've accomplished in the past and begin to come together as leaders who represent so many great folks across our districts. Think about this. Think about this. In 1903, in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, 2 guys fly this thing they called a plane 100 feet. Barely got off the ground. Barely got off the ground. Amazing thing. 44 years later, Chuck Yeager breaks the sound barrier. In 44 years, we go from 2 guys flying a contraption they called a plane a few hundred feet to Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier. And 22 years after that, another American steps on the moon. Think about it. In one lifetime, in 66 years, 2 guys flying 100 feet to putting a man on the moon. That's what this country is capable of. That's what we can do. And we, as the Congress who represent the people who did that, should start leading. Should start understanding what really is going on here. So I hope we defeat this. I hope we can begin to come together and recognize the greatness of the American people and focus on the things they want us to focus on. I yield back our time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 3 minutes.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 3 minutes.
Madam Speaker, we all saw it coming. President Trump was baselessly and deliberately whipping his supporters into a frenzy. Weeks before the riot, he used his bully pulpit to spread lies about the election. He told his supporters that the results were fraudulent. He implored them again and again to help him stay in power. And he convinced them that accepting the outcome of the election posed an existential threat to their families and their freedoms. We have a duty to observe, Madam Speaker, that racism played a direct role in this incitement. The president's violent rhetoric is always at its most fevered pitch when he is talking about the civil rights and civic aspirations of Black Americans and other minority communities. On January 6th, at a rally that was large, angry, and widely reported to be armed, the president's lies and violent rhetoric reached their crescendo. At that rally, the president took the stage. After reiterating the falsehood that we won this election, and we won it by a landslide, he told the crowd that if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. And then he urged the mob to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue to prevent the Congress from confirming the election of an illegitimate president. On that day, President Trump unleashed the force of a mob on this, the People's House. He encouraged that attack with the explicit intent to disrupt the joint session of Congress, an attack that threatened the safety of the Vice President, the Speaker of the House, and the President pro tem of the Senate, the next three officers in the line of succession. And look at what that violence has wrought. At least 6 dead, offices ransacked, the sanctity of our Capitol breached for the first time in 2 centuries. Our hallways littered with broken glass, the battle flags of a long-dead Confederacy, and the debris we have come to associate with the Trump campaign. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I have faith in the resiliency of our government. We will bring the rioters to justice. Their accomplices in this House will be held responsible. But today, we must focus on the gravest threat first. President Trump, who incited this riot and who remains a grave danger to the nation. As we warned the Senate when we tried him for his first impeachment, President Trump has made clear in word and deed that he will persist in such conduct if he is not removed from power. He poses a continuing threat to our nation, to the integrity of our elections, and to our democratic order. He must not remain in power one moment longer. Not one moment longer. The danger is too great. We must impeach. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. McClellan.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes. The gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
We'll go 4 minutes. Excuse me.
The gentleman from Ohio, in control of the time on that side of the aisle, wishes to yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from California. Correct?
Yes.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I didn't like the President's speech on January 6th either. I thought he was wrong to assert that the Vice President in Congress can pick and choose which electoral votes to count. He was wrong to set such a confrontational tone in a politically tense situation. But what did he actually say? His exact words were, quote, "I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard," unquote. That's impeachable? That's called freedom of speech. Now, he also threatened to oppose candidates in future elections. And by the way, that was directed at Republicans like me who'd resolved to uphold the constitutional process and protect the Electoral College. Well, so what? That's called politics. If we impeached every politician who gave a fiery speech to a crowd of partisans, this Capitol would be deserted. That's what the President did. That is all he did. He specifically told the crowd to protest peacefully and patriotically. And the vast majority of the But every movement has a lunatic fringe. Suppressing free speech is not the answer. Holding rioters accountable for their actions is the answer. And we are. And if we prosecuted BLM and Antifa rioters across the country with the same determination these last 6 months, this incident may not have happened at all.
Now,
short of declaring war, the power of impeachment is the most solemn and consequential act that Congress can take. To use it in this manner, in the heat of the moment, with no hearings, no due process, many members phoning in their votes after a hastily called debate, exactly 1 week before a new president is to take office, trivializes this power to the point of caricature. The Democrats have won everything in sight: the House, the Senate, and the presidency. In a republic, that calls for magnanimity by the victors. Only in a banana republic does it call for vengeance. Benjamin Franklin warned us that passion governs, and she never governs wisely. In our passions this week, we've set some dangerous new precedents that will haunt us
I can't
for
believe
years
that
to come.
shit.
Yesterday,
We redefined intemperate speech as a physical incapacity requiring removal from office. Today, we define it as a high crime and misdemeanor. Well, the moment any member of this body gives an impassioned speech and the lunatic fringe of their movement takes license from it, be prepared to answer to this new precedent that we established today. Now, I could cite plenty of provocative speeches made by Democrats that directly preceded violence this summer, but we've already had enough of that. You know, after 600,000 Americans had perished in the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln appealed to the better angels of our nature. He said, with malice toward none, with charity for all, let us bind up the nation's wounds. Those words were so important to the unity of our nation, they're inscribed in marble at the Lincoln Memorial. I cannot think of a more petty, vindictive, and gratuitous act than to impeach an already defeated president a week before he is to leave office. President-elect Biden's promise to heal the nation becomes a hollow mockery in the harsh reality of this unconstitutional act. God help our country.
Has expired.
Yeah, Connie.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Now yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Lofgren.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I'm the only member of Congress who's been involved in all three of the last presidential impeachments. Those were long proceedings. Today, we don't need a long investigation to know the president incited right-wing terrorists to attack the Congress to try to overturn constitutional government. The actions were in public, plain as day. His actions are the most serious offense against our Constitution and our country. They are impeachable acts. The founders devised the impeachment clause to protect against the president who would threaten constitutional order. If we don't act now, the impeachment clause would essentially be meaningless. Faced with these facts, if we don't impeach to protect our country, we will fail our own oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and yes, domestic. We have no choice. We must time has expired. God bless America. Gentleman from New York reserved.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs.
The gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 2 minutes.
It is with wariness and a certain unhealthy, morbid curiosity that I watch the beast attempt to devour President Donald J. Trump again. The craving to crush President Trump has never been satisfied, not through investigations, not through false allegations, and not even through an impeachment that was wholly without merit. And the timing of this impeachment makes little sense. Your candidate will take office in a few hours, and President Trump will relinquish the levers of power to President-elect Biden. But your craving was never a Biden victory, nor was it even a Trump defeat. You believe that your hunger will be finally satiated by impeaching this president without completion of his full term of office. You don't merely seek victory, but you seek obliteration of your nemesis. The thirst for Trump's destruction will not be slaked, however, even if you're successful today and were the Senate to convict President Trump. Yours will be a Pyrrhic victory, for instead of stopping the Trump train, his movement will grow stronger. You will have made him a martyr. Surely you're aware of this, and that is why your allies in the media seek to censor conservative voices. Your chums that sit on the boards of corporate America, yes, the same companies that the left vilifies, promise to starve Republicans from receiving their PAC donations. But I bet that the groundswell of support for President Trump and his policies will not go away. You see, the movement he started is based on building an incredibly robust economy, on a foundation of lower taxes and fewer regulations that has the wonderful effect of putting more people to work than ever. It is built upon a strong military that is extricated from endless wars. It provides border security, America First trade agreements, Mideast peace and stability. Those are the things the American people want. Your for-your appetite will be temporarily assuaged, while you will no doubt continue to chase after leaders of this movement, but your appetite will be unfulfilled. I urge you, please, do not and I'm mixing metaphors here, attempt to douse the remaining burning embers of this movement with gasoline. No one wants that. I urge you please to reconsider the reckless action in which you engaged today.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker.
Congress to prevent the peaceful transition of power. It was the most dangerous moment for our democracy in a century. Today we invoke the remedy the founders provided for just such a lawless president, impeachment. More important, today we begin the long road to restoration. America has been through a civil war, world wars, a Great Depression, pandemics, McCarthyism, and now a trumpet and white nationalist insurrection. And yet our democracy endures. It endures because at every juncture, every pivotal moment, when evil threatened to overtake good, patriotic Americans step forward to say enough. This is one of those moments. To preserve this sacred place, this citadel of democracy for ourselves and for posterity, let us say enough. Enough. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Goldman.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Here's a quote. I just don't even know why there aren't more uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be. Or, sadly, the domestic enemies of our voting system and honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with their allies in Congress of the United States. We were called enemies of the state. Those are all quotes from our speaker. Now, on our side, we didn't take those to be impeachable because we didn't believe she surely meant that. But by the Democrats taking this action, you're telling me, no, when we say those, we actually mean to incite violence. That's what this action is saying. Look, I just looked on the History Channel. It says these words: if the Judiciary Committee, talking about impeachment, finds sufficient grounds, its members write and pass articles of impeachment, which then go to the full House for a vote. Half of all the impeachments ever conducted, ever voted for, occurred under this speaker. Setting a precedent that says very clearly, because this impeachment ain't going to work, but it is setting the precedent. Unlike a year ago when we said, oh, it shouldn't go through Intel, it should go through the Judiciary Committee. Forget that. Now the message is, if you have a whim and you want to just go after a president, just go straight to the floor. No investigation, no Judiciary Committee, go straight to the floor. Use it as a political weapon as you wish. This is so dangerous, what you're doing. Forgetting all the precedents, yes, we can argue back and forth, but you're using this as a weapon, and you're destroying this little experiment self-government in a year's time.
The gentleman's time has expired.
It needs to stop. I yield back.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 1 minute. Suffragist and abolitionist Mrs. Jones stated, if we speak the truth fearlessly, we shall add to our number those who will turn the scale to the side of equal and full justice in all things. The truth is, President Trump incited violence against the United States government. The truth is, President Trump spent his presidency inflaming hate, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, and violence. The truth is, he was enabled by all those who perpetuated the lie that the most secure election in our nation's history was stolen. The truth is that these seditious actions left 5 dead, our capital besieged, our security threatened, and our democracy hanging in the balance. And the truth is, a vote to impeach is our resounding declaration that the government people shall not perish from the earth.
Gentleman from New York wishes to reserve.
Reserve.
Mr. Rice.
The last speaker said that for 4 years the president did all these terrible, insightful things, including anti-Semitism. I take exception with that, but I think it's important that we embrace one thing that was said. Yes, the president has been consistent for the last 4 years. During his campaign, I even, representing another candidate, said that the president had political Tourette's. He said what was on his mind without a filter. I don't think that's being debated here today. We all know that's true. What's being debated is whether with 167 hours left until he leaves office, is he a clear and present danger? And he clearly isn't. The president has acted substantially the same for 4 years. He has rallied his base, and he has in fact called for peaceful protest. He did just a few days ago. The fact is, we are trying to punish the president, at least so far, for 4 years of what he did, not for what happened last week. What happened last week was the result of anarchists who came loaded, prepared, and with weapons.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Richmond.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in my last floor speech in this body to do what I was sworn to do on the first day, to protect and defend the Constitution. President Trump put the domestic terrorists on notice by saying, "Stand back and stand by." He then summoned them to D.C., directed them to march on the Capitol, and then he sat back and watched the insurrection. Some of my colleagues, some of which may well be co-conspirators, in their latest attempt to placate and please this unfit president, suggest that we shouldn't punish Trump for his actions in order to unify the country. That is the climax of foolishness. Let me suggest to them, stand up, man up, woman up, and defend this Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, including Donald J. Trump.
President Trump, nigga, get that shit right, son.
Said we didn't need to impeach him because he learned his lesson, so no need to remove him. Well, we said if we didn't remove him, he would do it again.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Simply put, we told you so.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Richmond out.
I reserve.
Gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Arizona, Ms. Lesko.
The gentlewoman from Arizona is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition to the resolution. At a time when our country needs unity, it is concerning that my Democratic colleagues have chosen to begin impeachment proceedings against a president with just 7 days left in office. All legal challenges have been exhausted. Congress has certified electors over objections, and Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. President Trump has indicated he will peacefully transfer power to President-elect Biden next week. So why pursue impeachment just 1 week before he leaves office? I've heard my colleagues on the other side of the aisle say they have to impeach the president because he is too dangerous to stay in power. Yet they know that it is impossible for the Senate to remove him before his term expires. So what is the point? This move sets a dangerous precedent for our nation. If Congress is going to impeach a president, it must not only be done after intense debate and deliberation, not rushed through in the 11th hour to make a political point. This impeachment attempt is dangerous for our country and has far-reaching implications for our future. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I did not come to Congress to impeach Donald Trump, but the constitutional crimes by an out-of-control president inspired by his hatred and the big lie that he told cannot be ignored. Donald Trump is a living, breathing, impeachable offense. It is what it is. The violent attack on the U.S. Capitol was an act of insurrection incited by Donald Trump. He is a clear and present danger to the health, safety, and well-being of the American people, and that is why this impeachment is necessary on the House floor for a second time with a bipartisan majority. Violence will not win. Insurrection will not win. Sedition will not win. Terror will not win. Lawlessness will not win. Mob rule will not win. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Democracy will prevail.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On January 3rd, we stood here on this floor and swore an oath to defend our Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. 3 days later, that oath was put to the test when a violent mob tried to break down those doors to stop us from performing our constitutional duty. This mob was not without a leader. On that day, the president told them to walk to this Capitol 16 blocks from where he stood. They were radicalized by his lies and conspiracy theories he spent months fueling, many of which I've heard on this floor the last week. He needed to say only 2 words to end the violence: I concede. Because that's what leaders do in a democracy, because that's what we do in the United States. They put politics aside and put country first. And as I look to our colleagues over on the other side, I wonder how many of them will demonstrate that leadership and join us in holding President Trump accountable for inciting this deadly attack. How many will uphold our oath and put our country first to defend this Constitution from the threat in the White House? To do anything less is to turn your back on the oath altogether. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Ohio continues to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Cicilline.
The gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Cicilline, is recognized for 3 minutes.
Madam Speaker, for more than 220 years since George Washington yielded the presidency to John Adams, the peaceful transfer of power has been a hallmark of our democracy. In this country, the will of the American people reigns supreme over the ambitions of any individual. Every single president has honored and upheld these principles until now. Donald Trump lost his bid for re-election last November. It was a free and fair election. In fact, President Trump's own election security director called it the most secure election in U.S. history. But for 2 months now, Donald Trump has refused to accept the will of the American people. Over and over again, he's told his supporters he didn't really lose. The election was stolen from him and from them. And as they grew angrier and angrier over this perceived injustice, he told them there was still a way to keep him in power. So as Congress prepared to meet for the sacred ritual of certifying the results of the presidential election, the president made his move. He directed his supporters to travel to Washington for a rally to stop the steal. They did. He then, once assembled, he had one final request: march on the U.S. Capitol, do what it takes to help me hold on to power. We will never give up. We will never concede, he told them. If you don't fight like hell, he warned, you're not the country anymore. The people on the ellipse that day heard his message loud and clear. They answered his call for insurrection. As the third-ranking Republican in this chamber put it, he summoned the mob, assembled the mob, and lit the flame of this attack. Armed with guns, pipe bombs, bats, shields, zip ties, and more, they set their sights on the U.S. Capitol. They stormed the citadel of our democracy. Hundreds of domestic terrorists did what Donald Trump wanted them to do. They seized the Capitol and tried to end our country's 234-year experiment in democracy, as the Trump family and White House aides watched gleefully on television. They searched the halls of this building for the vice president, who they came to hang for treason. They overran the office of the speaker, who they came to assassinate. They sought above all else to seize control of our government in the name of Donald Trump. Let that sink in. The terrorists who stormed this building planned to hang the vice president, kill the speaker, and topple our government. They took down the American flag and replaced it with a Trump flag. I ask my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who are not planning to vote for this article, is this the kind of country you want to live in? What are you going to tell your children and grandchildren when they ask what you did in this moment? Did you stand for the Republic or for this president? Heed the words of Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president who told our country that a house divided against itself cannot stand. This great house in which he served cannot and will not endure if we do not stand together now. The president and the terrorists who stormed these halls last Wednesday did not succeed in toppling our republic. We must ensure they never do. I implore you, join us in supporting this article, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. The gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Van Drew.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
We've been here before. We've done this before. This has failed before. We fractured our nation using the same process before. The man they want out of office will no longer even be the president. We want unity. Away. It's a close darkness. He supports our current president. This takes their voice away. We must be bigger and better than the most base of instincts that have been driving our political discourse. It is the let's link arms with one another and begin to heal. Let's stop this impeachment. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to the chairman. President Trump's actions, encouraging, inciting a mob that stormed the United States Capitol for the sole purpose of stopping the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes, cannot go unanswered by this body. He must be impeached. If Congress does not act, if we shrink from our constitutional responsibilities to defend our republic, it will undoubtedly undermine the vision of America as the last best hope of earth, as Abraham Lincoln so eloquently said so many years ago. So to the millions of Americans watching today, I hope you understand that we are proceeding on this path out of love for our country. I will honor my oath today. I will vote for impeachment. And I pray that my colleagues will muster the courage to do the same. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from Ohio reserves. Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Clyburn.
The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding me the time. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the article of impeachment. Last Wednesday, we gathered to follow the Constitution's simple instruction to count the electoral votes that have been tallied by the states and submitted to us. This president refused to accept those results. Instead, he sought to overturn them by inciting a violent insurrection. But we were not deterred from doing our constitutional duty. Today, we must do our constitutional duty once again. While the president failed in his attempt to upend our democracy last Wednesday's events, make clear that if we do not hold him accountable and remove him from power, a future attempt could very well be successful. The survival of our democracy depends on defeated candidates accepting their defeats, as has been the case in every presidential election since 1864. Our January 6th joint session is a vital part of the transfer of power, not the contest for power. Vice President Gore understood this, accepting and certifying the 2000 election result in which he was defeated. Vice President Biden understood this, accepted and certifying this president's victory in the 2016 election. This president's refusal to participate in the peaceful transfer of power and his role in the exciting of the last week's violence pose an existential threat to our constitutional democracy. This threat must be extinguished immediately. This president must be impeached and convicted, and he must be prevented from ever attempting to seize power again. With that, are you back?
Back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Buck.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding time. Madam Speaker, I've heard that President Trump radicalized the rioters who stormed this Capitol, and I would say that we need to look no further than ourselves to find out what happened and to look at history. Americans were frustrated when they learned that the FBI was investigating the Trump campaign. They were frustrated to learn that the Obama administration and the DNC had created this false campaign against the Trump administration. They were frustrated, Madam Speaker, when the inauguration of the president was boycotted by over 40 Democrat members of this House. They were frustrated to read in the Washington Post the day after the inauguration, "Let the impeachment begin." They were frustrated when members of this House spoke over and over about impeaching the president days into his administration. And then the socialists in Hollywood joined their allies in Congress. Robert De Niro said that he wanted to punch the president in the face. Madonna thought about blowing up the White House. Kathy Lee Griffin held up a likeness of the president's beheaded head. And nothing was said by my colleagues at that point in time. In fact, one Democrat colleague said that Trump supporters should be harassed wherever they are, in restaurants, on the streets.
God damn.
During this time, the president was under investigation by a special counsel who found no collusion, no conspiracy with Russia. The president's supporters were harassed. Ajit Pai, the head of the FCC, was called a dirty, sneaky Indian. His children were harassed in school. The press secretary, the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, was kicked out of a restaurant for being a Trump employee. The DHS secretary, Kirsten Nelson, harassed at her home. Trump donors were publicly...
Gentleman's time has expired. I'm sorry you couldn't hear me. The mic wasn't on. The gentleman from Ohio reserves.
Good job, sir. I didn't...
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 2 minutes.
Smashing windows and beating police officers over the head with fire extinguishers. A bloodthirsty mob attacked the Capitol and invaded this Congress last Wednesday. They erected a gallows and repeatedly chanted, "Hang Mike Pence." They stormed Speaker Pelosi's office yelling, "Where's Nancy?" They brandished the Confederate battle flag and occupied the Senate chamber. They wounded dozens of people, hospitalizing dozens of people, killed 5 of our people. For 6 hours, they shut down the counting of electoral college votes, our sacred process under the Constitution for peaceful transfer of power in the United States. They may have been hunting for Pence and Pelosi to stage their coup, but every one of us in this room right now could have died. As Senator Lindsey Graham said, the mob could have blown the building up. They could have killed us all. And now the far right is calling for return engagement from January 17th to January 20th. They're asking the president to pardon the conspirators in last week's rampage as they prepare for a race war again next week. And it's a bit much to be hearing that these people would not be trying to destroy our government and kill us if we just weren't so mean to them. Well, despite the floor leader's desperate effort to polarize this body and this nation along party lines, it is the chair of the Republican conference who best articulated what happened in a statement yesterday, and I recommend every American read this. Liz Cheney of Wyoming, the elected chair of the Republican conference, wrote, "The president summoned this mob, assembled this mob, and lit the flame of this attack. Everything that followed was his doing. None of this would have happened without the president. The president could have immediately and forcefully intervened to stop the violence. He did not. There has never been a greater betrayal by a president of the United States of his office." Request 10 seconds.
Gentleman from New York.
I yield an additional 10 seconds.
An additional 10 seconds to the gentleman from Maryland.
Cheney says there's never been a greater betrayal by a president of the United States of his office and his oath to the Constitution. Read Ms. Cheney's statement. Let's come together and impeach the president for this high crime against the Republic. We don't have a minute to spare. He is a clear and present danger to the people.
The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Seems to me that impeachment is an itch that doesn't go away with just one scratch. It also seems that President Trump may be most likely to be impeached when he is correct. Before the last presidential impeachment, President Trump rightly pointed out the improper activities of the Biden crime family, and subsequently he's been proven right. And don't think for a moment, Madam Speaker, that we're going to drop that or stop our pursuit for the truth. Before that, we had the Russia hoax, where you had the president and the DNC were colluding with Russians to disorient our democracy. How right he turned out to be. And then we have the 2020 presidential election, where the president correctly pointed out unconstitutional behavior, voting irregularities, concerns over tabulations, dead people voting, and now impeachment again. When they go
this
low,
is fucking crazy.
we kick them. Eric Holder, former Attorney General under Barack Obama, breaching the Capitol was as low can be. We all denounce it. But who is it that they're kicking? The president, who created soaring highs for our economy, rising wages before the pandemic, 400 miles of wall to stop the caravans, who drew down troops in the Middle East and showed empathy for the forgotten men and women of our country. It's why so many people love him so much, and it's why they're kicking all of us. This president has faced unprecedented hatred and resistance from big media, big tech, and big egos, from congressional leaders on both sides of the aisle. Before the rioters tore through that glass, Speaker Pelosi stood at that rostrum and tore through the president's State of the Union speech, inciting anger, resentment, division. Some believe that truly these true colors are being shown now through this divisive partisan impeachment. The Speaker of the House, I would request an additional 40 seconds.
Go to the speaker, please. The gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, I yield the gentleman an additional 40 seconds.
4 seconds or 40 seconds?
40 seconds.
45 seconds.
Gentlemen, the Speaker said to us just moments ago, words matter. But apparently those words don't matter when they're uttered by Democrats. When the gentlelady from Massachusetts calls for unrest in the streets. When the gentlelady from California brazenly brags that she called for people to get in the faces of those who serve and support the president. I denounce political violence from all ends of the spectrum. But make no mistake, the left in America has incited far more political violence than the right. For months, our cities burned, police stations burned, our businesses were shattered, and they said nothing. Or they cheerled for it, and they fundraised for it, and they allowed it to happen in the greatest country in the world. Now, some have cited Some have cited the metaphor that the president lit the flame. Well, they lit actual flames, actual fires, and we put them out.
Expired. There will be order in the House.
I yield back.
The gentleman from Ohio, do you wish to reserve your time? The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Swalwell.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
America has been attacked before, but not like this. On January 6th, Donald Trump incited thousands of radicalized terrorists to attack the Capitol to stop a transition of power. Let that sink in. Our president incited our citizens to attack our Capitol. America was not attacked in the past sense. This president has inspired future plots. America is still under attack, and that's why Donald Trump must be impeached. I've read many of my GOP colleagues know what the president did was wrong, but are afraid for their lives if they cross the president. I'm sorry that you're living in fear, but now is a time to summon your courage to guide you. We have all seen the images of the courageous officers who have risked their lives so that you could flee this floor and see your families. That was almost a week ago right now. Officers engaged in hand-to-hand combat for hours with these terrorists. Stampeded, and one of them lost their lives. I'm not asking you to summon the courage that they did. I'm just asking you to do your job and
The
hold
gentleman's
this
time
president
has
accountable.
expired. The gentleman from New York reserves.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, we
The
reserve.
gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Donald Trump is the most dangerous man to ever occupy the Oval Office. I want to take you back 1 week ago, today, when people were barging through these doors, breaking the windows with weapons, armed, pipe bombs, coming here to harm all of you, to harm the Speaker, to harm the Senate. Let me ask you a question. What do you think they would have done if they had gotten in? What do you think they would have done to you? And who do you think sent them here? The most dangerous man to ever occupy the Oval Office. If inciting a deadly insurrection is not enough to get a president impeached, then what is? All of us must answer that question today. The Constitution requires us to impeach and remove Donald John Trump.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves his time. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Dean.
The gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, 1 week ago today, I was trapped in this House chamber as the banging on the doors began. I feared for colleagues, reporters, and staff. I feared for myself. The attack on the Capitol will never be forgotten. The President and many in this chamber have shamelessly peddled dangerous untruths about the election, despite the warnings of where those lies would lead. And last Wednesday, those lies and dangers found themselves inside this Capitol. This hateful rhetoric is another deadly virus. It is time to remove it from its host. To heal, we need accountability and truth. That begins by acknowledging the president's dangerous lies and their deadly consequences. Removing Donald Trump is the beginning of restoring decency and democracy. What happened last week will not be forgotten, and what we do this week will long be remembered. Vote yes on impeachment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's 1 minute to the Republican leader. Gentleman from California, Mr. McCarthy.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, gentlemen, for yielding. Madam Speaker, let me be clear. Last week's violence
Violence is never a legitimate form of protest. Freedom of speech and assembly under the Constitution is rooted in nonviolence. Yet the violent mob that descended upon this body was neither peaceful nor democratic. It acted to disrupt Congress's constitutional responsibility. It was also an attack on the people who work in this institution. Members, staff, and the hundreds who work behind the scenes so that we can serve the American people. The greatest statesman in the history of our country understood that the most dangerous threat to freedom is lawlessness. A young lawyer named Abraham Lincoln famously said, "There is no grievance that is a fit object of redress by mob law." Yet for several hours last week, mob law tried to interfere with constitutional law. Some say the riots were caused by Antifa. There is absolutely no evidence of that. And conservatives should be the first to say so. Conservatives also know that the only thing that stops mob violence is to meet it with force rooted in justice and by moral courage. And last week we saw mob violence met by courage, sacrifice, and heroism from the brave men and women who protect this institution every day. For the bravery of the Capitol Police, the destruction and loss could have been much greater. We owe them a tremendous debt of gratitude. The loss of Officer Brian Sednick and Officer Howard Lindengood is tragic and heartbreaking. We mourn their loss, remember their lives, and continue to pray for their families and loved ones. The officers of the Capitol Police deserve our eternal thanks. We will never forget the dangers they faced, the determination they showed, or the sacrifices they made. And make no mistake, those who are responsible for Wednesday's chaos will be brought to justice. Which brings me to today's debate. I believe impeaching the president in such a short time frame would be a mistake. No investigations have been completed. No hearings have been held. What's more, the Senate has confirmed that no trial will begin until after President-elect Biden is sworn in. But here is what a vote to impeach would do. A vote to impeach would further divide this nation. A vote to impeach will further fan the flames of partisan division. Most Americans want neither inaction nor retribution. They want durable, bipartisan justice. That path is still available, but is not the path we are on today. That doesn't mean the president is free from fault. The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept the shared responsibility. Quell the building unrest. And ensure President-elect Biden can successfully begin his term. And the president's immediate action also would be prudent. Unfortunately, that is not where we are today. Truly, this past week was one of the most difficult for Congress and our nation. Of all the days here, last Wednesday was the worst day I've ever seen in Congress. Our country is deeply hurt. So where do we go from here? After all the violence and chaos of the last week, it is important to remember that we're still here to deliver a better future for all Americans. It does not matter if you are liberal, moderate, or conservative. All of us must resist the temptation of further polarization. Instead, we must unite once again as Americans. I understand for some, this call for unity may ring hollow.
times like these are when we must remember who we are as Americans and what we as a nation stand for. And as history shows, unity is not an option, it's a necessity. It is as necessary today as it was at the start of our country. I want us all to think back to how John Adams and the Federalist Party handed power over to Thomas Jefferson and his party after the election of 1800. That election, and indeed that era, was one of the most divisive ever. Partisans used every dirty trick in the book. They demonized each other, dismissed reasonable dissent, and described their opponents as seditious. Sound familiar? The election of 1800 could have destroyed our young nation. But instead of breaking us, it helped us bring us together, thereby preserving the world's last best hope of freedom. After a hard-fought battle over the Electoral College and Congress, Adams conceded. And a peaceful transfer of power, the first in American history, took place. Jefferson, for his part, put aside the division of the era and preached forgiveness, yes, unity. In his first inaugural address, he famously said, "Every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle." Jefferson and Adams didn't end every difference of opinion that existed in America, nor did they try. In a free country as big and diverse as ours, that would be impossible. What they did was more important. They recognized a deeper unity, a unity rooted in the famous proposition both men helped to write. At a critical moment in history, our founders chose liberty, partnership over tension, division, and partisanship. For the sake of our country, we must make the exact same choice. We have already begun. Last week, despite the lingering shock and amid the windows still broken, we did what all healthy democracies do. We debated and we voted. In this country, we solve our disputes at the ballot box and through debates and votes on the floor of this exact chamber. We did our duty then, and we must do more. The eyes of the nation and the world are upon us. We must seize this opportunity and heal and grow stronger. As leaders, our place in history depends on whether we call on our better angels and refocus our efforts to work directly for the American people. United, we can deliver peace, strength, and prosperity our country desperately needs. Divided, we will fail. What we saw last week was not the American way. Neither is the continued rhetoric that Joe Biden is not the legitimate president. Let's be clear. Joe Biden will be sworn in as President of the United States in 1 week because he won the election. And the presidency and this Congress will face immediate challenges to be addressed.
No help and nothing, good shit.
In that effort.